Hello, guys and gals. Okay. Man, it's been a rough night for me. Worked all night, came home, did a declone for Diablo 2, Uber Diablo, helped everybody get their Uber Diablos done, tried to go back to sleep. I think I slept for like 4 hours. And then I'm gonna come in here and I am so morbidly curious as to how they do with this. You guys don't even know. Like, you don't even know. Like, the game, there's like almost like a train wreck kind of a vibe to this game at this point, where literally, like, they just keep making the wrong mistakes over and over again, and like, they don't seem to learn from their mistakes, and they just keep making things worse, and it's just like, oh, I'll fix it, don't worry, I'll fix it. It's like a cartoon where the guy keeps going, I'll fix it, don't worry, I'll fix it, and then every time he fixes it, it's somehow slightly worse than it was before. And it just keeps getting worse, and you're like, you didn't fix it, it's still broken. And he's like, oh, no, I'll fix it. You're like, no, please don't fix it, because every time you fix it, it's just, yeah. Oh yeah, let me turn off the music. I totally forgot. I know, I forgot about the music. My beautiful lady came to the rescue with a 5-hour energy. I need some 5-hour energy right now. By the way, we got the rest of the new character day coming later today. Well, you like my ethereal sweatshirt? This is you can get this on ggmentor.com. I'm gonna plug all my merchandise. I got my own website and everything. I got ggmentor.com. If you go over to ggmentor.com, you'll see all sorts of cool stuff. I got Evil Cat hoodie, Ginger Gaming Mentor. I got a little GG hoodie. That's the one I'm wearing right now. I got my Chinchilla with GG Mentor. That's the one with the Chinchilla and the freaking Diablo. And then and the newest one I have is the Kubus t-shirt. I also added some sleeveless varieties as well, because I had a couple requests for some sleeveless varieties. But the Kubus t-shirt is Kubus the Monster Dogs. He's a monster dog. He's a monster dog. I don't even call him Monster Dog. I just call him Monster Dog. He gets mad at me. I don't care. If you guys want to go get some merch, it's ggmentor.com. Also, if you are a member of the channel on YouTube, I actually have there should be a 10% discount in there for you. Not sure if you guys noticed, but I'm pretty sure there's a 10% discount in there for you if you're a member of the channel. I think if you're one of the higher members, you get like a 20% discount off the merch shop, so you can get whatever you want. There's some pretty cool colors on the hoodies, too. This is the green, obviously, because it reacts with the green screen. That's why I like it. Lets me be invisible. Invisible. Did I have a good nap? I had a 4-hour nap, Devil Cookie. It wasn't the greatest, but it was there. Anyway, as I was saying before I stupidly didn't turn off the music, I swear Diablo 4 has become like a train wreck for me, and I really want to see what the hell they do next. It's, you know how, like, obviously you don't want anyone to get hurt, but when you see a train wreck, like, you just can't look away. It's like some sort of, I don't know, it's like you just gotta watch the train wreck. And in Diablo 4, they just keep making the same stupid mistakes over and over again. And I'm so curious to see what they do for Season 2. It'll be interesting to find out, that's for sure. It will be interesting to find out what they do. It does start in about 20 minutes. Obviously, we got, 1:38. It starts at 2 p.m. EST. And supposedly they got a lot of talking points today. Let me see if I can pull up the talking points. So we can go over what they're potentially going to be talking about today. They didn't give, like, a full bullet point list, but they did give a pretty good one. This is Adam Fletcher talking on Twitter here. And he did say that they would be talking about the Season of the Blood, which is vampires. I'm not really interested in the vampire stuff. Walk through an extensive list of changes and improvements, Q&A, and then on the 10th, apparently they're going to be doing class updates, deep dive on damage bucket changes, the resistance changes, discussion about unique items, blah, blah, blah. But that's not today. So what we're getting today is this. I don't know. I'm not really too excited about the vampire stuff. I'm perfectly honest, I don't think vampires fit in the Diablo universe. There are vampires in Diablo, but they look like this. Let's see if I can pull up a good picture of one of the vampires in Diablo 2. Okay, this is what vampires look like in Diablo 2. Okay, they are like arcanic mages with staves, and they're usually hunched over. They got like black robes. They're basically, you know, like Trangul type creatures. There's quite a few illustrations of like what they look like in the Diablo verse, and they are much more liches than they are anything. They seem to be like liches, something like more akin in the D&D universe to, you know, one of those creatures that becomes an immortal lich, which if you ever look up liches on in like D&D, you'll see that liches in D&D kind of resemble the same thing. So if you go like this is a lich from the Forgotten Realms, kind of resembles more of a lich than it does a vampire. But I swear they keep going with like the dumbest vampires. They do like Castlevania style vampires, like freaking I mean, they be going with these vampires. They're like, yeah, these guys are from Romania. Yep. I don't know. This kind of vampire is much more interesting to me than the other kind, in my opinion. I like the Diablo 2 vampires, and I feel like they do fit the world, but they keep trying to like shoehorn in they're just trying to get them, shove them in there. They're trying to shove in like the Castlevania style vampires, and it just doesn't. It's not a fit for the Diablo world. It doesn't fit in the Diablo world. When they keep trying to shoehorn it in, every time they shoehorn it in, it's just like this doesn't belong here. Case in point is the new Diablo Immortal class, which is literally a vampire. I mean, they literally made a Diablo Immortal class, which is straight up a copy of like the Belmont vampire, and doesn't look anything like the Diablo, like the Diablo-esque vampires. Like, doesn't look anything like the ones that were already established within the series. It just looks like a frickin' Belmont-esque style, like Castlevania style vampire. And it's just it doesn't fit the series. It doesn't fit the genre. It doesn't belong. I don't know why they're even going down this route. Man, I'm tired. Let's see what people are saying in chat. I'm kind of curious. Where's the chat right here? Here we go. Let's see what people are saying in chat. D4 will be the first game to be nominated for a Razzie Award. What? Just a gentle reminder to anyone that's excited. Stop it. These guys have done nothing but take a dump. Oh, they deleted it. They deleted it. Oh, I see the moderators are out in full force. He didn't even say anything particularly nasty. He was just like, hey, don't be excited because they haven't done anything but poop on the game. And they still deleted it. Wow, it wasn't... he didn't even say anything all that mean. Like, he didn't even really, like... It wasn't like he cussed, and it wasn't like he was, like, straight up bad-mouthing the games. He was just like, hey, don't be excited because you probably have nothing to be excited for. They straight up deleted it. They got some Nazi-ass style moderation going on up in here. There, I made a comment. Look at me. I'm a participant of the... Watch my comment get moderated too. I want to suck your blood. Man, they got like super slow mode turned on. Like, you can't send messages, what is it, like a minute and 30 seconds between messages? They got it set up for like super duper uber duper duper slow mode. God dang, I went to go mute my microphone and my mic box is just like covered in dog slobber. Cody, if my mic shorts out in the middle of my... Because you want to slob them on everything. Slob 'em, boy. That's why Kubis has his own t-shirt, because he's a slob 'em boy. Poop lick his elbow, Kubas. Dang, that's just rude. Why you guys gotta do me like that? Cody, don't poop lick nobody's elbow. It's rude. Don't listen to him. He said, what? Poop licking elbow? He said, I like doing that. That's my favorite activity. He said, the poop licking elbow is that's what I do best. He said, where's the elbow? Let me poop lick it. So I got the tongue ready for poop licking. I don't know. They got a lot of work to do. As I have been trying to like make videos on. I don't know if you've seen my video on things that I would fix. And I'm going to be quite honest. Like, I made that video, and then I was like, you know what? There's like freaking 50 or 60 more things that I would change about the game. But if you guys haven't seen my how I would fix Diablo 4, I go over a lot of stuff. Let me, for instance, let me link this real quick because it may be pertinent to some of the stuff that comes up in the video. So if you haven't seen this already, I go over some of the more, well, obvious things. And the reason why I'm linking this is because, well, they may talk about some of these things in the dev update, right? So if you guys haven't seen, I go over the stash, like all the problems with the stash. I spend like 15 minutes just talking about the stash. The stash is horrible, by the way. I swear most people I've talked to tell me that the stash like literally gives them anxiety to go into because it's so bad. The legendary affixes need their own codex. The drop sounds are terrible. I really wish they fixed the drop sounds in the game. The EXP range, I don't know why the EXP goes so far in the dungeons. It really needs to be capped at like 3 screens away. Unique items, they really need to do a lot of work on unique items. And as you saw in that Twitter post that I put up earlier, they said that they're going to be doing some serious changes to the unique items. So it looks like they are going to be doing some changes to unique items as I said they needed to. I'm not trying to be cocky. I'm just going over everything that I've experienced in Diablo 4. If you haven't been following me, I played a lot of Diablo 4. At least 1,000 hours. And the game's got some issues, and I'm hoping that they fix them. I feel like the core of the game for Diablo 4 is there. Let me not crap talk the game completely. I do feel like the core is actually a pretty decent core, but the UI is terrible. There's tons of other problems, like Diablo 4 being Dance Dance Revolution. Like, this is something that they really need to mess around with, because you can't ever stay still. You can't ever look away. You can't ever, like, blink too hard or check your map, because God help you, because if you look away for even a fraction of a second, you're dead. They really need to add a mini-map. Better mini-map and an overlay would be absolutely amazing. I don't know why the campaign bosses aren't in the game. I mean, there's so many things, like the item level equaling the sea level, that needs to be fixed. The super uniques are too rare. Like, I don't know why the super unique items like the Shaco and whatnot are so ridiculously rare. They're way too rare. They need to be much more common. Mangsong's Lesson is something that you might find like once in a season, and the super uniques are currently like many times more rare than Mangsong's Lesson. In chat right now, just as a experiment, how many Mangsong's Lessons have you guys found in your entire time playing Diablo 2? Okay? I want you to think about how many Mangsong's Lessons you guys have found, okay? And then compare that to the number of Shacos that you've found in Diablo 4. The rarity of Mangsong's Lesson is pretty rare, right? Mangsong's is pretty rare, but it's still something that you can find. A lot of you will probably say 1, or maybe like 2 or 3, right? But some of you will say 0, okay? But how many of you are going to say 1 for the Shaco in Diablo 4, right? 0 of you, basically. I bet you there's nobody in chat right now. I bet you there is nobody in chat that has found a Shaco in Diablo 4. Nobody. So despite the fact that we will have people say that they've found Mangsongs, Nobody in chat is going to say they found a Shaco in Diablo 4. Because the thing is so ridiculously rare that it's many, many factors times more rare than one of the rarest items in Diablo 2, which is insane, right? And then the level penalties. I don't know why the level penalties are so severe, but they really need to be fixed. They make group play so difficult. I can't group with any of my friends, pretty much. And I have a huge kinship of people, and we are constantly trying to group with each other, and it just makes grouping an absolute chore. Because if you're not within, like, 5 levels of the person that you're grouping with, you're pretty much just SOL. Zooming out the camera would be a huge freaking, just please zoom out the camera. Please, 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 please. Looks like they're starting with the trailer.
Season 2 will be our biggest update to Diablo 4 since launch. With a new quest line, events to play as you drive back the Vampiric horde, unholy vampiric powers to wield, and new endgame encounters to test your skill.
And players will need to harness the enemy's own blood magic against them to end this new evil before it's too late. In Diablo 4, the Season of Blood.
In Season 2, the people of Sanctuary have a new danger to face: invasion by an army of vampires. This shadowy vampire cult has laid claim to large areas of the world and have begun abducting innocent citizens to use in their dark rituals.
Everyone's lives are at risk, including your own.
In Season 2, players are going to uncover a plot led by a new ancient vampire named Lord Zir, who's awoken recently.
Lord Zir is a remnant of a lost age. Before there were humans in Sanctuary, it was inhabited by the firstborn children of Inarius and Lilith, who are known as the Ancients.
But because of Inarius' actions, the Ancients had their powers drawn away from them. But some among them were not strictly subject to a true death.
Zir and his cohort were banished to sleep for an eternity in the City of the Ancients, but due to the events of Diablo 4, the city began to awake, with dire consequences for the humans living on the surface above.
During the events of Season 2, the player is going to contract a vampiric curse, but they're not under Lord Zir's control, which gives them a unique opportunity to strike back against the cult and stop Lord Zir's plans.
We'll encounter a variety of new characters this season, including a band of vampire hunters, one with a particularly shadowy past.
Seek out Zir's army. Kill as many as you can.
Eris is a professional vampire hunter. She's crossed and recrossed the wilds of Sanctuary, putting an end to the undead since long before the events of Diablo 4.
I need to go after the magistrate, and you're going to have to come along.
Eris is played by actor Gemma Chan. It's exciting to see more film and television actors lending their talents to the video game world. Gemma brings a wealth of experience to the table from a wide variety of roles. She was a great choice to breathe life into this character of a world-weary but determined vampire hunter with a lot of emotional complexity.
That's a bite mark. You're changing, aren't you? No, from the depth of that wound, you should have already. She is strong. She's compassionate towards others, but she's also witnessed a lot of horror in her life, so she's pretty emotionally guarded and stubborn and fixed in her worldview. Oh, you're going to change. I'm sorry, but whatever's preventing your cravings won't last forever. It never does.
She realizes that the player character has these vampire traits, which makes him a useful tool, but potentially disposable one.
This is madness. Perhaps that's what it takes.
One of the core seasonal mechanics for this season are vampiric powers. Vampiric powers can be acquired by defeating Bloodseekers and minions of Lord Zir in order to acquire potent blood, which allows you to unlock or upgrade vampiric powers.
When you collect all of these various powers, they have costs, which are going to be detailed as part of the pact system. So armor pieces that you collect during the course of the season are going to have these packs associated with them.
There are 3 types of packs, and you can use the boons they provide in order to fuel the blood seals for various vampiric powers. You can combine the power of different blood seals in the Sanguine Circle, so long as you have the appropriate combination of packs in order to power them.
One thing we've really tried hard to do is to provide powers that enhance every build so that there's no one right way to play when pursuing that vampire fantasy.
There's one in particular that I like where as the player dashes, they turn to a cloud of bats, and they'll curse creatures they pass through along the way. As you kill those creatures, you're going to actually steal their souls. When you use certain abilities on your character, all of those souls are unleashed, dealing devastating damage to nearby creatures.
There's also an ability called Rising Moon, where you can stack basic skills, and after you reach a maximum number of stacks, you go into a vampiric blood rage. If you can't get enough of bats, there's even a vampire power that allows you to summon a bat companion. They'll take a bite out of your enemies and have a chance to stun them.
Lord Zir's army is pushing across Sanctuary in an event called the Blood Harvest, which will always be active somewhere on the map, but will change locations in a cyclical way.
Blood harvests are large-scale open-world events where vampires have overwhelmed an area in the hopes of enslaving the populace, harvesting their blood, and siring more vampires.
Players will venture into these areas to rescue prisoners, stop sinister rituals, and hunt for high-value enemies. Of course, they'll be rewarded for their efforts with a variety of new items, as well as the potent blood that fuels their vampiric powers.
In Season 2, the Season of Blood, we're going to be adding 5 new returning endgame bosses for players to engage with once they get into World Tiers 3 and 4. Players will be able to earn the materials to summon these bosses by completing Whispers and by completing HellTide events.
We have some new enemies with powerful elemental attacks, giving players more reason to seek out and equip gear that enhances their resistances.
What sets these new in-game bosses apart is that they offer a new way to farm uniques. So if there's a build-defining unique you're after, you'll be able to target farm specific bosses.
And our most challenging boss that we're going to be adding as part of Season 2 is also going to have an opportunity to drop extremely rare unique items that players have been hunting for. We're also going to be adding some quality of life updates in Season 2. The first of which is we're going to be taking our gem system and making it so when gems drop for the player, you're actually collecting materials. They're going to be stored differently. They're not going to be going to your inventory the same way, to help alleviate some of the concerns about inventory space that players have talked about before.
It's a bad idea. The gems going into the materials is a bad idea. Stupid.
Into creating a seasonal character. If you previously unlocked a mount in Diablo 4, it will be immediately available to use when you begin your journey through the Season of Blood. And we've made it so that renown rewards persist through seasons, so that the reward is now account bound.
As we do with every new season, we'll be adding a new season journey and a new battle pass filled with new, vampiric themed cosmetics for them to collect. And we'll also be adding some new town portal cosmetics, both in the free and paid versions of our battle pass in Season 2. We'll also be making a number of other changes to the game, updating unique powers and items, reviewing legendary aspects for different classes. We're going to be updating stats like our resistance values across the game, and a number of other balance tweaks to make sure the game is as fun as possible for players.
One of the most exciting things for me about working on Seasons is that Sanctuary is a big place and there's a lot going on. The primevals and the angelic forces are still very much in play, but I think players are going to enjoy seeing some more human-scale dramas play out.
Diablo 4's second season will be our largest content update yet, but we're only getting started. Along with providing new quest lines, powers, and events each season, we'll continue to improve upon established systems by listening to player feedback to make your adventure in Sanctuary the best it can be.
We're incredibly excited for you to explore more corners of Sanctuary, so come join us in the hunt.
Guys, can I point this out really quickly before this starts?
Hey guys, how's it going?
They
Long
showed
time
the
no
armor
see.
upgrades.
Welcome to another development.
They showed the armor upgrades, and this is all I thought of. This is the Diablo Immortal Gem upgrade system. It looks identical to the Diablo Immortal Gem upgrade system. I had to show this before we started.
Shelley, game director for Diablo 4.
I'm Antonio Watson, associate dungeon designer for Diablo 4.
And I'm Joe Pipora. I'm the associate game director for Diablo 4's live service.
And I know you guys actually just saw an early look at Season 2, Season of Blood, with that video before the actual live stream kicked off. I do want to start off, before we kick off into this conversation,
Yeah.
there is going to be an emergency alert if you live in the US at 11:20 on every single mobile device. So you may actually see us look at our phones or our watches, or you might hear it at home if you live in the US. So if you do hear a weird noise or something, we've tried throwing everyone's phones out of the room, but it still might happen. So it's a good time check though, which it lets me know that it's 11:20, which is really funny. But we do have a lot to...
11:20 Pacific time.
Yes, Pacific time, 11:20 Pacific. Sorry, we live in California, and so that is the time that we kind of base it. So based off your time zone, that is in 17 minutes, everyone. But I did want to give that heads up to everyone that if you hear a weird noise, or if you hear a weird noise at home, that's what it is. It's a test. If you live in the US. If you live in the US, that is. But we do have a lot to talk about here. We do want to talk about Season 2. Of course, with Season of Blood, and go through all the gameplay mechanics, a little bit about the story, some of the new elements that are coming within this season, since we're now coming really close to Season of Blood, which is coming out on October 17th. And of course, Season of the Malignant will also be ending on October 17th, so it'll be a season transition for players between both seasons. And then we have a bunch of gameplay updates and quality of life updates to actually go through a ton. Like this, we expect this actual developer update live stream to go for about 2 hours. Because we do need to go through a ton of items with everyone. And then we have some news and announcements to make regarding Diablo 4 towards the end. And of course, we have our Q&A, which we'll be taking questions from Twitch chat. And then I know we actually have some questions from the forums because we had started a forum thread earlier this week or late last week regarding the developer update live stream. So I do know that we do want to kick it off with a little bit about season 2.
Yeah.
So, want to jump straight into it?
Let's dive in. So, I know that we just watched the video together where we talked about the Season of Blood, but in season 2, the players are going to be confronting a new villain who's begun to like surface throughout Sanctuary. A character named Lord Zir, this ancient vampire who's awoken recently and begun to like gather all of these vampiric cultists and other followers to his banner in effort to like kind of overtake Sanctuary and achieve his own aims across the world. Now, while the player is progressing through the season, they're going to meet a new character named Eris, who I think we have. So you're going to meet Eris during the course of the season. Eris is a vampire hunter who's been trying to like thwart Lord Zir for the past the past few weeks and months. Trying to hunt them down and try to eliminate them entirely. She's not having great luck sort of investigating the cults. She needs more help. The player is going to kind of enter the picture, but as part of the story, as the player is progressing through the season, mild spoiler here, but the player is going to contract vampirism. Now, but due to the strange nature of the interaction with the Lilith's blood in the player character, they're going to be able to resist some of the effects of Lord Zir's influence, and instead gain all of those same powers without those detriments that are holding back other creatures, which can be really, really cool. But Eris is going to be fairly nervous about this, as she's only ever seen anyone who ends up actually contracting vampirism this way end up following and serving Lord Zir in the end, regardless of their intentions overall, which we dig more into a little bit later on with enemies and such. But this represents this interesting new character that you'll be able to like work with as you're kind of following the quest line of the season. So as you're going through these things, you'll be kind of going across all of the world. And I know, Antonio, we talked about we had talked before about how there are a number of dungeons we added with the season, right. And like you kind of go into some of those part of the quest line.
So we have new dungeons that are part of the quest line. You can explore crypts. There's a really cool dungeon at the end when you are going to confront Zir for the final battle. And in addition to that, throughout the story, you will be revisiting some old places that are a bit different now that Zir's minions have come and taken over.
Yeah. So I think we're seeing some of the dungeon stuff here.
Yep.
So the new dungeons in the quest line are pretty cool, particularly that finale that you called out, like when you're going to sort of get a chance to, once you've tracked down Lord Zir with Eris and you get a chance to really confront him in his lair, those are some pretty epic moments that we don't want to actually show on stream just now.
Spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers for all that stuff just yet, but definitely a lot of things to look forward to. So the player's going to meet other characters as well as they're progressing through the season. There are other allies they kind of are going to meet. They're going to learn more about Lord Zir's plans overall, what his real intentions are for Sanctuary as all of this is going on. So that's kind of like the high level of what's happening in the world. Basically, Lord Zir and his army of vampiric cultists are trying to take everything over, and that manifests in a bunch of different ways throughout the season. But I think the first thing I really want to talk about, or the next thing I want to talk about, are the mechanics, like what you're going to be doing during the season to kind of gain power and such. So we talk about the fantasy of the season is that the player is basically becoming part vampire during the course of the Season of Blood. And part of that comes down to making sure that we have cool vampiric powers for players to collect and use. So what we see here is our vampiric power user interface. It's the way players are going to be able to collect a lot of powers as they're progressing through the season, and then slot them into the circular UI above. So throughout the season, players are going to be able to acquire up to 22 vampiric powers as they play. And these are designed such that they are, unlike in Season 1 where with Wellington Hearts, we had a lot of very class-specific hearts baked in. We tried to make sure that the vampiric powers that players collect in Season 2 are all class-agnostic in nature, so that there's just more combinations and things for players to select from and play with as they're thinking about their build. And yeah, so we have a few of these showing up right here. They come with a few different varieties in terms of the level of power of them, and each of them have a pact cost. Well, I will talk about a little bit more in just a moment. But you see these pact costs listed at the bottom. Players need to acquire a certain armor pieces that have these packs associated with them in order to fuel these. Again, which I'll talk about a little more in a minute. Why don't we actually see if we take a look at maybe a couple of these powers themselves real fast. Yeah, so here's one. So players can have a vampiric power they get as they're progressing through the season, where their evade allows them to turn to like a cloud of bats, and it also makes them unstoppable for a few seconds after they use it at the same time. And it's a way for the player to deliver a new effect that you can get throughout the season, which is called Vampiric Curse. So when you see that red effect above a lot of the creatures that the player is fighting, they're under the effects of Vampiric Curse. And if you kill them while that effect is active on those creatures, you get to steal their souls and bind them to you for a short period of time, up to 8 of them at a time. And then, when you choose to use a defensive ability on your character, you unleash all of these souls. As you can see here, these missiles, like these spirit missiles that fly out and hit lots of different creatures as you're playing through. So it kind of gives you this opportunity as you're going through packs and dungeons or elsewhere to kind of stack these up and use them to quickly burn down groups or elites that you might have to come across as you're playing. There's other cool things you'll get, like there's abilities for based on other companion skill uses and other things where you can we have this where the bats will come down and attack your enemies. And then many other powers. We talked about there was an overpower power we showed before. There's another one here that is more focused on channeling skills. Yeah, here it is. So when you start using channeling skills, you'll be able to drop this pool of blood around you, which gives you some extra protection. It also enhances all the damage that you deal while you're nearby. So this is going to be able to fire when you're using any kind of channeling skill and enhance those channeling skills. It just gives you a bit more positional gameplay to be thinking about when you're playing into this build. So pretty fun ways for you to kind of maximize and get extra damage rather from a channeling build for a class.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's cool about the that I like about the Vampiric Curse is that there are a few different ways, a few different things that can trigger it, and a few different ways to key off it. And so a lot of these vampiric powers have interactions with that curse. It kind of forms a unifying thread in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. We think it's a really cool extra ability for players to play with, and being able to trigger it in different ways is very fun, we think. So the next thing I want to talk about was actually how you're able to fuel your vampiric powers, those packs I talked about before. So if you look here in the inventory screen, you'll see that that all of the armor pieces that players are collecting are going to have a set number of packs associated with them. So you see here on the items themselves, they all have these small symbols off on the left-hand side, or underneath them, or rather. And these represent the various packs that players can collect of the 3 different types to fuel all the vampiric powers they can collect. Because ultimately, you want to gather all your vampiric powers, you want to level them all up to level 3 to make them as strong as you can get them, and then you want to make sure that you can fuel all of those vampiric powers so you can have all 5 slotted that you really care about. And to do that, you need to make sure that you've got the right kinds of armor pieces available. The packs are only going to appear in armor, they don't appear on jewelry or on weapons, just on armor pieces. But and I should say, every armor piece that drops during the course of the Season of Blood will always have packs associated with them as well. So you're not looking for items that are going to have. It's not rare in that way. And as the player progresses through the season, they're going to also gain these new items they're able to collect from completing various content types. We'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But these allow players to basically remove packs from items. They allow them to eject new packs into items, up to the pack limit, which is based upon the tier of content the player is playing in. So normal items have 3, and then sacred have 4, and then on to 5 as you go into ancestral. So as you're progressing through, you can get more of these packs, and you have a lot more control over your ultimate pack loadout on your items as you collect more and more of these consumables that you can use to kind of modify and update your items. So we're really excited about this. Great ways to get these are going and completing other, like I mentioned, the Blood Harvest in the video. We'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But killing Blood Seekers is a way to get these in a really good way. So there's lots of ways to kind of grab these. So that's kind of like the very high level. We'll talk more about other things you'll be doing to gain those vampire powers. We get to some of the other sections when we're talking about Season 2. But there's also a lot of new enemies and things we're adding as part of Season 2 as well.
Right. So as part of Season 2, we actually added a bunch of new monsters. Lord Zier has a ton of different minions that will be all throughout the continent. First, we have here our Shadow Vampires. These guys are not your typical flavor of vampires. They have a bunch of really cool new attacks You'll see them all over the overworld. You'll see them in a variety of dungeons. Paired with these guys, we also have our blood skeletons. These guys are kind of similar to our regular skeletons, but they also come with new attacks that allow you to have new counterplay and techniques in order to defeat them and get around them. So be prepared for that.
Yeah, they have like a little bit more area denial baked into their kits, right? As you're fighting some of the blood skeletons.
Yeah, you definitely want to watch where you step, like when you're engaging with these guys.
Yeah, and the vampires have like these cool things where they occasionally drop these like giant like heart-like lumps on the ground, and sometimes they'll be able to trigger shields off of these things. So you kind of like change your target priority as you're going through spaces where you have to fight shadow vampires frequently to make sure that you're knocking these things out to prevent those shields from being applied. So yeah, there's some cool things to react to as part of this. But of course, that's not even the only creature, right? Because there's the man himself, right?
Yeah. So we also have Lord Zir. Here he is on his throne.
Brooding.
Yes. He is the mastermind. You will be facing off with him throughout the season and during the end of the season. He is our big bad evil guy, and coming along with him are his lieutenants, the Bloodseekers.
Oh yeah, the Bloodseekers. So Bloodseekers are really cool. So Bloodseekers are a new idea in season 2, and the concept here is that like as the player has been is sort of protected a little bit by Lilith's blood in this way, that they're not able to be controlled by Lord Zir after they contract vampirism under his in his forces. There are other heroes who've gone out there that don't have that same level of protection. Who've gone out there trying to stop Lord Zir, trying to stop the vampiric advances. And they have fallen victim to the blood cults and to Lord Zir's forces that way. And for those characters, now you've got vampiric sorceresses, you've got vampiric barbarians, you've got these bloodseekers out there looking to kill you, the player. So as you're progressing through, you'll be dealing with enemy rogues, you'll be dealing with enemy druids and necromancers as you're playing, and dealing with their specific like spells and kits that we've created for the season for players to interact with. And honestly, finding Bloodseekers is great because these guys are just blood bags. You know, they have a really, really good chance to drop potent blood. And potent blood is going to be a currency that you're going to be collecting through the season. They'll be able to use to basically upgrade powers that you already have, your vampiric powers, and unlock new ones that are available through the vampiric power UI. So really, whenever you find Bloodseekers, you want to take them out because they are, first, they're pretty fun to fight, they're a little challenging, but they also have the ability to give you big upgrades for your vampiric powers. And they can jump you too, right? So like we make sure like, Bloodseekers are, you'll find them in the world, particularly like in Blood Harvest. We'll talk about that again. I keep saying we'll talk about things in a minute, but there are lots of chances to get them, to fight them in Blood Harvest. But you can also find them in dungeons and stuff too, right?
Yeah, so you can see them in the overworld, but they will also invade you in dungeons, so don't let them catch you slipping. They will be all over, finding you when you least expect it.
Yeah. So you just, as you're passing through a dungeon, you will have a barbarian jump on you, whirlwind, they'll be all trying to slow you down, right, and causing problems. Yeah, very, very fun. So yeah, a lot of new enemy types as part of the new season. So then I guess next thing is, finally it's time to talk about Blood Harvest.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I mentioned before that Lord Zir is taking over Sanctuary, and Blood Harvest is really the way that we're representing that. Starting right at level 1, you'll find that Lord Zir's minions have taken over broad swaths of the 5 zones in Sanctuary. And it's going to be filled with like his minions out there trying to like drain the blood from a variety of different people. There's that
emergency alert.
There's that emergency alert we talked about.
There we go.
Right.
Now everyone gets to experience this together. And my phone as well. So while these events are active, or rather these activities are active, you'll find Lord Zir's armies like marching across Sanctuary, taking people hostage, taking them prisoner, draining them of blood, and just causing general havoc in these areas where there's like new propping and there's new creatures. There's lots of things to do as you're kind of going through this.
So what's the difference between Blood Harvest and HellTide?
Sure, that's a great question, Antonio. So obviously there's some similarities to the way that things are working in HellTide. The difference here is that, first of all, it's available right away at level 1, as you're progressing. But also, while these events are active, there's always a Blood Harvest active across Sanctuary at any given time. Like, when a Blood Harvest ends in one location somewhere in Sanctuary, a new one's going to pop up as Lord Zir's forces now move to a new location. And one of the cool things about Blood Harvest that's a little bit different than things like HellTide is that as you're kind of going through and playing, you're going to be earning a couple of new materials that you don't get elsewhere. And that is, you're going to be able to earn bloodlures, which bloodlures that you'll be able to use to basically like bait bloodseekers to come to you, to be able to fight packs of them as time goes on. And you're also going to be earning these vampiric keys you can use to open like prisoners like cuffs, to be able to open vampiric caches and other things out in the overworld. And one of the cool things about this is that these materials that you're collecting, these currencies that you need to kind of like do some of these activities, these don't disappear at the end of a blood harvest. So as you collect them, they stay with you from that point forward. So there's not limited progress in that way. Yeah, here's an example of a player going and using bloodlures to summon a few of the bloodseekers in combat. So yeah, and then whirlwinding accordingly. But so that's a couple differences. And the other is there's actually another new feature they're adding in Season 2, which we're calling right here, it's called Hunter's Acclaim. And as you do things in the Blood Harvest area, as you're killing Bloodseekers, as you are freeing prisoners, as you're completing new Blood Harvest-themed whispers that are also going to be active in those areas, you're going to be earning Hunter's Acclaim that will allow you to basically go and earn a number of other rewards. Some of the vampiric powers that you want to unlock for your character are available through this system, a few of them. And then there's lots of like potent blood you can get from the system, and then also gear as well as you're progressing through. So there's a bunch of different stuff in here for players to do. It's we're really excited to see how they level up in this experience.
And the Blood Harvest occurs in addition to HellTide, right? Once you progress up into the higher world tiers, you'll still be seeing HellTides.
That's absolutely right. You'll still see HellTides as well, but you'll also see higher level Blood Harvest as you get into like world tiers 3 and 4.
Awesome. So we got a lot of information here about Season 2, but Season 2 also has some other components to it that actually are beyond even just like seasonal stuff. Like, and I know people may have seen in the video the discussion that we quickly brought up like before the stream actually started, which was about the new bosses that are being added in. Can you guys kind of walk through like what the new endgame boss system is going to be for players that do want to kind of experience that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right that first and foremost, this is content we're adding to the Eternal Realm as well as the Seasonal Realm from this point forward. Yes. We're continuing to add more activities like this as time goes on. But there's actually, I think I have a handy dandy chart, a very designery chart to help players understand kind of what we're talking about here. So what you see here is the way that we kind of look at the content progression of Diablo 4, the way the players are playing through the experience, the sorts of activities they engage with as they play at various stages.
Like in Season 1, right?
Yeah, in pre-season and Season 1. Yeah. So yeah, you can think of it in that way. So yeah, our 1 to 50 experience, obviously you're leveling up initially, maybe you're going through the campaign for the first time, you're progressing through, eventually you get out of World Tiers 1, 2 and get into World Tier 3 after you finish the capstone. Here you get to do, you have higher level whispers to do, you get exposed to Nightmare Dungeons for the first time, you get exposed to HellTide for the first time, World Boss get a little bit tougher, Legion events get a little bit tougher, and we're making some changes there as well. And then eventually you get into World Tier 4, now you're getting your ancestral items, and you continue to move on through Nightmare Dungeons, and you continue on through HellTide until eventually you go and you confront Echo of Lilith, potentially, if that's one of your goals for yourself, and you try to take her out. So that's kind of like what we had in place right at launch, not even thinking about Season 1 necessarily, but that's like what the end game sort of looks like. It's a lot of Nightmare Dungeons, a lot of HellTide, right? And we've heard a lot of feedback from players, and also from our experiences playing the game, that players are looking for more milestones, they're looking for more goals, they're looking for more like things to farm, ways to make their characters powerful. So there's some big changes we're making as part of the Season of Blood, and we can show that here. So now when the player gets into World Tier 3, there's 2 new bosses for them, or 1 returning boss for them to go and engage with. The first is Echo of Varshan, our good boy Varshan that everybody loves, is going to be back in Season 2 for players to be able to hunt down in order to kill, to get various craft materials they can use to summon other bosses later, but also specifically to get uniques that only drop from Varshan. So every one of the bosses that we add as part of the Season of Blood is going to have their own distinct loot list associated with them, with unique items, and there are some cosmetic rewards as well that we'll be able to talk about in a little bit. So that's a reason why you're going to want to go hunt each of these down. Now on this board here, you can see that I kind of like connect the dots in terms of where these things come from. So if you want to go hunt Varshan, you need to go complete Whispers. There's chances for you to find like malignant creatures as you're completing Whispers in the overworld. They have rare chances to occur. And you'll also be able to get these new malignant body parts you need from completing Whisper bounty turn-ins. So when you go and you get your cash reward at the end of a Whisper run, there's a chance for you to have one of the pieces that you need to summon Varshan, reconstitute him. Because in the Season of Blood, there are new layers that have been added around the world. And the lair for Varshan is in a kind of a corrupted hollow, malignant hollow beneath the Tree of Whispers. So right there's an entrance down in where you're able to fight some awesome malignant creatures. No malignant hearts dropping, but malignant creatures certainly down there. And at the end of that small dungeon, you're able to go and basically throw these materials into this new brazier that we've added to be able to summon Varshan back from the dead to fight him for the special loot that he has. Now, that one of the new creatures that we're adding is this the Galvanic Saint, which we'll show off some of the new art for some of these characters in just a moment. But this is a new, very lightning-themed boss that players will be able to go and engage with as they complete HellTide content. They will learn Infernal Steel from opening various caches and use this as a way, as part of a new layer, to go and summon the Galvanic Saint and deal with his lightning-themed attacks. And that's actually something that might be worth pointing out. While we're not talking about the elemental resistance changes until next week when Adam comes back with Charles and they talk about all the class changes and itemization updates that are happening as part of the season, it's worth pointing out that several of the bosses in this chain have they are very elementally themed in terms of their attacks. So you should be looking for like lightning resist explicitly if you're trying to farm Grigwar. And you'll be looking for cold resist to find from the Beast of Ice later. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. So so that's World Tier 3. This is a way for you to get some of those build-defining uniques you might need to kind of progress to the Sacred Tier, give you those extra rewards as you go. So now we're talking about World Tier 4 for a second. So you've got into World Tier 4. Echo Varshan is now still available for you to fight in World Tier 4, where he drops ancestral versions of those same unique items. And the Galvanic Saint is also available for players to fight to get ancestral versions of those unique items. So those are still there. Additionally, when you kill Varshan and when you kill the Galvanic Saint in World Tier 4, they drop summoning components that you need in order to summon Duriel, King of Maggots, who is a new level 100 boss that we're adding as part of the seasonal experience, who has a chance to drop unique items as well as a low chance to drop uber unique items.
So what does that mean, in terms, when you say uber uniques, a lot of people go like, oh, low chance, there's already a low chance. So what does that mean for a player for uber uniques now with this new system?
That's a great question. You will absolutely know people that have uber uniques after this goes live, and there's a way for you to farm them specifically from going after Duriel, right? It is still not every time you kill Duriel, you're gonna get an uber unique item. They're still very rare relative to other item types. But it's not like it was in the past. Like, you're going to see people in your clan that have uber uniques. You're going to know people that have uber uniques. You have a way to hunt for these, right? In this world. So that's a really, really big push as part of the new seasonal program. Now, there are the two other bosses that I didn't talk about too much. The first is the Beast in Ice. So the Beast in Ice is a new boss that you can go and summon after you start completing Nightmare Dungeons higher than Tier 30. So Tier 31 plus Nightmare Dungeons, level 85-ish monsters and so on from there. As you fight and complete these Nightmare Dungeons, there's chances for the components that you need to drop at the end of the Nightmare Dungeon you'll be able to use to make a new special Nightmare Dungeon key that explicitly brings you to the Beast in Ice's lair. So that is the way that you're able to summon forth the Beast in Ice and fight them in combat to get their special loot. And they've got some really, really potent items as well. And then lastly, for the new boss we're adding with the season, is we talked about Lord Zir already. While you will be able to confront like a story version of Lord Zir as you go through the quest line in World Tiers 1 and 2, there is a much more difficult, challenging version of Lord Zir that you'll fight in World Tier 4 once you're ready for that content. And you'll be able to access and summon forth Lord Zir this way as you kill world bosses in Season 4 and as you kill, in Season 2 rather, Season 4. As you kill world bosses, yeah, I know, I really am. As you kill world bosses in World Tier 4, and as you complete Legion events in World Tier 4, you'll be able to gather these materials forward and bring them to go and summon Lord Zir. So, a couple extra things to kind of call out here. Actually, why don't we show? I think we have video of these new bosses. Yeah, okay. You see Grigwar summoning in for the first time. Very excited for players to go and do that fight. The Beast in Ice in his new lair. And of course, Duriel, King of Maggots.
So gross.
Yeah, it's super gross. Very fun. So yeah, these three we still have Lord Zir. We don't want to show off the boss fight just yet, but you'll get a chance to go and obviously fight a version of him in the quest line and a much more difficult version of him later. But one other thing worth calling out as part of this, the materials that players are going to be collecting to use to summon forth these bosses. There's a couple of advantages. First, if you've got friends, you can try to farm these components up together and use that as a way to more quickly access these fights and get more chances and opportunities to get some of the loot off these bosses that you're looking for. But you can also trade these materials between players as well. So if you've got half the things you might need to summon Varshan, but you don't have the other half, you can go on trade chat and try to find the remaining components, spend the gold necessary to maybe exchange for those things, and then go more quickly summon the bosses that you need. And also, as you collect these materials and you realize you may have overfarmed the materials that you need to summon, and you got the items you're really looking for early enough, now you have a chance to go and take those and maybe sell those off, to make a tidy profit for yourself, so you can have an easier time enchanting items and other things as you go.
Exactly. Make friends.
Yeah, make friends for sure. Yeah.
And you said this before, but all 5 of these bosses have unique loot tables.
Yes.
That have specific uniques on them that you can target.
That's right. So if you're looking for a particular unique item in the game, and we've added a lot of unique items in Season 2 as well that also can all appear on these bosses, you will be able to you will know the sorts of bosses you're looking for in order to farm for those items. Right, so if you're looking for something, there is a boss that's going to drop it. You know what you need to go target farm and try to get those items.
Yeah, and what we're seeing here is just some of the kind of almost exclusive items that you can find off of some of these bosses that within the 5 of them on their drop tables. But then, like Joe and Joe have mentioned, you can find unique items off of them. And Uber Duriel has the opportunity of dropping Uber uniques. And yes, you will find people and know people that and may find yourself an actual Uber uniques with this season and going forward, because again, this is in Eternal Realm and this is in every season going forward, and we'll be adding more to it.
That's right.
And I know a lot of people have been asking about unique items and hey, are there going to be any future changes for unique items? And I just want to note because we had been talking about the stream on October 10th, where we just have a lot to talk about today, so we're actually splitting up the streams. But on October 10th, we're talking more about class balance changes. We're also talking about unique item updates. In fact, nearly every unique item is getting some sort of update in Diablo 4, and we're actually going to be talking more about that on the 10th. So these unique items are obviously going to be, big things to actually kind of hunt for players when they are fighting these specific bosses. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about today. We'll have more to talk about on the 10th, and of course we're also going to be talking about resistances more on the 10th with Adam Jackson, and some of the damage bucket changes. I know we have crit, vulnerable, and overpower damage that's also getting kind of adjusted and tuned, kind of what we mentioned in prior streams. So that will all be happening on the 10th. But we got to hear a little bit about the bosses here. Now we do want to talk about some of the gameplay updates and some changes that are coming to Diablo 4, which is a huge list that we actually do have. So it's going to take us be prepared. We got a lot of slides and a lot to discuss here, but we do want to kind of jump right into them so we can kind of get through all of them for sure. And a lot of this, and I do want to preface, a lot of this is based off of things we've heard within the community feedback, and also just changes that we most definitely wanted to make to the game to make a better experience for players.
So you're going to zoom out especially
the
as camera
we're going
finally? Because community feedback has been
1.
overwhelming.
So, Joe, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and so we can see, I'm going to talk about Scroll of Escape here. I just wanted to mention, we're seeing some of the images of some of the mount and some of those item art.
Oh, yeah.
Those are also new cosmetics that are exclusive to, that you can get from farming.
That's
farming
correct.
those
these are exclusively
bosses.
dropped from the various bosses that we're talking about adding in Season 2.
Yeah.
On Eternal and Seasonal.
And these, when we say Eternal and Seasonal, we mean that these are going to persist. Persist beyond Season 2.
That's correct. Yeah, these bosses aren't going to go away at the end of the season. We want to add more things for players to do once they get into these World Tier 3 and 4 content tiers. There's more updates we want to make to existing content types. We'll talk about some of those things today.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more planned. This is sort of the first step in creating more interesting activities for players as they get into World Tier 4, especially as they're thinking about level 100, especially making sure there's more fun things for players to do and engage in.
More for an endgame.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Scrolls of Escape. It's been a little while coming, but Scrolls of Escape will now be consumed automatically if you disconnect while you're in combat. Because this is a consumable item, we feel pretty good about the case where people are, disconnecting on purpose. You're still going to consume that item. So we feel pretty good about this change. And, it always sucks to die to a disconnect.
Yes.
It's a good change.
Never fun.
Incenses, which are the party-wide version of elixirs, of course, will now grant a bonus to experience, and they will persist through death. So they'll be more useful.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is a big one. We have a bunch of different experience changes that we're going to go over here. You're going to see a few different references to different experience changes. One of the things, and if you're playing Season 1, you'll notice that we did make some adjustments to experience in Season 1 as well. That's sort of, all this is sort of coming together with some changes to how experience is calculated in terms of which things are multiplicative. So the way this will work is, in general, you've got different kinds of experience bonuses. So you've got maybe a bonus from incenses that we just added, for example. You've got other experience bonuses maybe from seasonal blessings. These are going to add together in a bucket and then be multiplicative with your World Tier bonus. This means that these experience bonuses will be much more impactful in Season 2 than they were in Season 1. In fact, cumulatively, as I said, there are a number of different experience bonuses here. And cumulatively, your time, compared to Season 1, your time to get to level 100 is going to be 40% faster.
Yep, about 40% faster to reach level 100
than it was
2.
in Season 1. Yeah, in Season 2. This is,
why we do that?
Well, we found that Season 2 is really about, we just talked about all of the boss changes that add more content to do as you're leveling up. We also want players to be able to get to level 100. It's a goal that many players set for themselves, and it should be an achievable goal. Mm-hmm. And so in Season 1, we saw that there were some players who were getting frustrated. You maybe get to level 75, and you're like, I want there to be more things to do, and this is like, just feels like it kind of slows down. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to smooth that over and make the process of reaching that goal and getting to the end of the season journey feel like an achievable goal for all our players who invest time in the season. And of course, along the way, you're going to be having a lot more cool stuff to do with all of the boss ladder stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, these are good changes. I'm very excited about this.
So, as I said, we'll talk more about other changes to experience as we go through this. But moving on for the moment, when you skip the campaign to jump into the world, as many players do at the start of a season, you're going to have more waypoints that start unlocked compared to previous seasons. That means you don't have to do quite as much running to unlock waypoints as you're going. This isn't every single waypoint, but it's key strategic waypoints that are related to places that you want to go and are centrally located.
Yeah, make it a little bit easier to get around to like whispers that are in rotation as you're like leveling up your character initially. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are some other changes. There's kind of a suite of changes. I was just talking about a number of changes to experience. There's also a suite of changes to sort of town efficiency, and this is the first one we're going to talk about some more in a little bit. This is a big one. I know this is one that's close to Joe's heart in particular. Renown rewards will now persist between seasons. So what this means is that when you create a new character in a season, you can still earn renown. You can still do side quests if that's something that you enjoy doing. You can go and do strongholds. You can do all of those content types. But all of the rewards that are associated with renown will persist. So if you had, and you don't have to, you're not going to have to log in on a different character or anything. Like any reward that you've claimed, if you claimed it in preseason, on Eternal, in Season 1, on any character, you're going to have that reward automatically when you create your new character in Season 2. And this applies to all of those obols. It applies to skill points,
potion
upgrades, all that stuff. Yeah.
It's just nice to be able to start a new character and not feel like you have to go do every single side quest over again to get all of the stuff.
Yeah, and this is something it's a really good point, Antonio, because when we are talking about these general improvements, what these came from is a lot like us, the dev team playing the game, and I think Joe mentioned this before, but it's really important, playing the game and then reading feedback from players, feedback on social, feedback from videos, everything, and really looking at like what are players asking for, where are there places where we can make the game more fun? Because, you know, we talked back in season 1, like our goal is to continue making the game more fun for players, right? And so this is really sort of the result of that. And,
yeah, absolutely. I think making sure that players have more choices when they are able to log into their seasonal character right away and not feel like they've got this this oppressive goal of needing to completely fill out their renown in order to play optimally for the season. I think is going to be really, really healthy and good for the experience. I'm really excited for players to be able to like just be able to carry these things over with their characters. Now, you're not going to need to log in like you did last time when we made changes in the past. Now, like after you've claimed these rewards on a previous character, you're just going to have them on the future characters.
That's right. Yeah, and I was going to say the.
I disrupted your flow.
No, it's all right.
Train of thought
Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next bullet. Overworld monsters. Yes. So this relates to another change. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. But overworld monsters will now match your player level in World Tiers 3 and 4. I know that you know this is in preseason it worked this way, and we ran into some challenges with the game not feeling like you were getting upgrades that really felt powerful, and players rightly called that out. Like, look, I want to get powerful new items, and then I want to smash monsters.
Yeah,
and
you want to feel more powerful.
That's a really core part of the loop. So this change makes these monsters on par with your level. This is based on reviewing season 1. But it's coupled with some other changes that make sure that that it does feel meaningful and powerful, and you're not just feeling like, oh, I'm just sort of playing catch up.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more later on.
All right.
And of course, at the end of season 1, your season 1 character is going to migrate to the Eternal Realm, and so we've added 2 additional character slots to make sure that you have plenty of space for more characters.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to note is like when characters are migrating from season 1 to Eternal Realm, we actually have all that information that's going to be posted immediately after this live stream. We have a huge blog that will be essentially talking about everything related to season 2, and so all the details about how that actually happens, how that works, will be in that blog. It works very similar to like if you play Diablo 2 Resurrected, you'll know exactly how that works, and it's very similar to that. But all that information will be on a blog afterwards.
Yeah,
so.
We'll go into detail about what happens with your items and how they carry over.
Yes.
Yeah. Lots of great info there.
Okay, so next I think we have towns. Yeah, towns and vendors. Yeah. So a couple things we've changed here to make towns a little more efficient, and that's like really a focus of ours as we kind of move forward. First up, the occultist is now set up by the Tree of Whispers. So when you go back and you turn in your whispers, there are additional functions you can perform right there without having to like fly off to Kyovashad or anywhere else to go do other work. So I think that's nice for the loop. We've gone through, we've added stashes much more liberally throughout Sanctuary. This is the first of those changes. So any small town with a waypoint attached to it is going to have a stash near it as well now. So just more opportunities to drop things off or pick things up as you're out there playing, either while you're leveling up a character from 1 to 50 and you just are finding things you want to drop off, or as you are playing in the end game and you're finishing whispers and things nearby. More opportunities to get to a stash. And then, additionally, we've added stashes to like near a lot of different vendors in capital cities. I think we have a video for this in just a moment, but we'll get to that in just a second, I think. But yeah, we've added more stashes all over the place. And then, of course, Purveyors of Curiosities. These lovable rogues, really tucked themselves away in a distant corner of a lot of the capital cities throughout Sanctuary. We're bringing them closer to the waypoints. We're reacclimating them to society, reintroducing them to the world, and just making sure that they're a lot easier to reach, as you can see here for Kyovashad. Like the Purveyor of Curiosities is now like right in the tavern. So it's just a lot easier to go and spend your obols as you're accruing them, and it's harder for you to forget that you have obols, for example. You'll get more gear as you're playing.
The Purveyor has become more social.
Yeah, become more willing to like integrate with the rest of the people in town. Yeah.
It's like he realized his shady dealings aren't actually going to get punished by anyone, so he just might as well do them out in the open.
Yeah, the law is a rough construct in many ways in Sanctuary. So in this way, that they're back in the good graces.
And I know, like we've because we've heard from players like, hey, spending time, they spend a lot of time in town, obviously. Like if they're going to be at the blacksmith or at the purveyor, at the occultist or anything, this is now going to just help make that a little bit more efficient, especially if they're going between different areas or different towns. They can now find stashes everywhere, and a lot of it was, thanks to the feedback from players on that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. So I think that's about it for towns and vendors. There's plenty more stuff to talk about.
Yes.
Want to talk about mounts?
Yes, we should talk about mounts. This was something that we talked about before. This is something that Mr. Joe Shelley had posted on the platform known as X, formerly known as Twitter.
Did he make a post on
He made
X?
a post, not a tweet.
Not a tweet. That's
a
different
post.
thing. Yeah.
And we've had a lot of people ask about this ever since that post, and we mentioned that it would be something that's coming in season 2. So do you want to go through all our changes coming from mounts?
Yeah, let's take a look at them. The first off, there are a number of changes to mounts, but I want to call out that the one that players and we feel is the most significant here is it's just that they're going to get stuck less, right? So when you're trying to turn your mount like in a tight corner, or you're trying to navigate through a narrow space, the mount is going to much less frequently come to a dead stop or slow down dramatically. And part of that as well is mounts can jump over regular jump traversals just like your player, but we're a little bit finicky about it.
They were very finicky.
I think some people didn't. In practice, they didn't always. They were a little bit too scared of jumping over traversals. So we fixed that. It's much more smooth now, so a lot less dismounting as you're traveling around the world. We also increased the base movement speed of mounts. This means that traveling on your mount in town, for example, will be faster. We didn't increase the top speed of the boost, so the maximum boost speed is still the same, but your base movement speed unboosted is going to be 14% faster. We also made a change, and this is one that players point out. We have sort of a cool. I think it's like a very cool system for allowing the mount to have analog control with a mouse and keyboard. But the consequence of this is that it was sort of finicky. You really had to have the mouse cursor at the edge of the screen to get full speed, and if you had a little bit farther away, you kind of felt like, well, am I actually at full speed? So you really felt like it has to be at the edge of the screen at all times, because of course when you're riding through the world, you want to be going as fast as you can, right? Mm-hmm. And so we made a change here. We didn't remove. Some players have suggested just make it binary. I should be at full speed all the time. But we made a change that makes it. The cursor is much more generous about allowing you to be at full speed. It's about half or so of the screen. Beyond that, it'll be at full speed. And so you really have to have the cursor close to your mount if you do want to slow down. And because it is still handy for navigating around between tight areas. So big improvement for mouse and keyboard users there.
Yeah, it just makes the mount a little less, a little easier to use in general, right? Like it's easier to reach that top speed. You don't have to have the mouse as far away and be planning your path at the very edge of the screen constantly. It's just generally not how people play and when they're moving in the game. Yeah. It's usually a bit closer to their character when they choose their movement options with the mouse. So yeah, feels really good.
I think between the faster mount and moving the important things closer to the waypoint, that is the 40%.
That's the 40%.
That is 41%. Those experience changes are massive. So.
Yeah. This is just additive to it.
But I think it's a great point because as Adam was saying as well, town efficiency is also something that players care a lot about, right? Mm-hmm. So I mentioned the speed, the spur. This is your speed boost on the mount. We increased the duration. The rate at which you acquire spur charges is the same. So that means that with the increased duration, you're going to be able to be boosted a lot more of the time.
Yeah, way more spur up time.
Yeah, quite. It's close to 100%. I think it's pretty significant.
Yep.
And of course, this is great because those pesky barricades that would previously cause your mount to stop can be broken through, so you don't need to dismount unless you want to.
Right. Look at this fancy in slide video. Just added. Like the quality of the production has just gone up. Just as oh, look at this.
We got some production value.
Swipe. Fancy.
So you can see the player boosting through the barricade there. You also see the player using their dismount skill, and we have some changes related to that as well. So some cooldown changes.
Oh yeah, these are really big.
So I, as Adam mentioned, I posted about this on social media, and one of the things that we were experimenting with is having the mount cooldown reset after you take a traversal, because of course you get off your mount, you take a traversal, and then there's like a cooldown before you can mount again. It just feels sort of arbitrary, like why that's like slowing down the game for no reason, right? So we tested that in practice, and we found that while it was cool, what was even better is just reducing the base cooldown of the mount across the board. So mount cooldown goes down from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. If you're taking a lot of damage while you're mounted and you get knocked off your horse, the cooldown for getting back on the horse also halved from 30 seconds to 15. And as I mentioned, the dismount combat skill, like this is a really cool skill. We want it to feel like players can use it and feel powerful. So this is actually the cool up on it. When you jump onto your mount, there's a few seconds before you can use it, and 10 seconds felt way too long, so we reduced it to 3.
Yeah, it's much more fun to like just get on your mount, and if you see a pack of creatures that you need for a quest or for a whisper or anything else, be able to just disengage right into them, and start the fight up right away, as opposed to having to like wait. You just end up not using it.
I would like make circles around attacks.
If you have like 2 seconds left or something.
So wait, hold on, monsters. I'm going to do this cool ability.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just
give me a little bit.
Just wait, it's happening. I promise. Yeah. So.
Yeah, very cinematic, but not as fun.
Awesome. So I know now. Oh,
God.
Wow. Okay, we have production behind the scenes, by the way, guys.
Yeah, honestly,
they're just smiling back there as they make these like crazy swipes between transitions. But we are now going to talk about some changes coming for Nightmare Dungeons.
Oh yes.
Yes. So we Antonio, I know, can kind of take us through all our changes here.
Finally, this is what I'm here for.
This is the moment.
This is what I work on. So, yeah, we have tons of changes for Nightmare Dungeons coming this season. The very first big change that we have is teleporting to a Nightmare Dungeon from the map will take the players directly inside the dungeon instead of to the dungeon entrance. This will cut down on having the double load screens when you just want to go and play
These transitions.
More, like grind more Nightmare Dungeons and get your Paragon points up. I think this is a pretty, this will be a pretty popular change. I think this is something that people have wanted for a while, ever since we first implemented teleporting to Nightmare Dungeons.
Yeah, getting rid of this extra load screen, I think is going to be a huge boon for me. So I'm supportive.
All right. Okay, and it's funny enough. What is our stream software thing that we use?
vMix.
vMix. People are claiming we're doing this in PowerPoint. It's actually through vMix. So credit to the. There you go. We could have gone the easy way out and done PowerPoint, but no. All right. Sorry for interrupting. There you go.
Moving on, back to Nightmare Dungeons. So our dungeon events have more monster density now. And also, more importantly, in higher world tiers, your NPCs will no longer get one shot. So they will not be completely useless, or the events won't be hopeless when you're trying to defend someone from an onslaught of monsters.
Yeah, in general, I think this is going to be great for just increasing the perceived efficiency of dungeon events across the board.
Right, right.
It's pretty to be like, my friends and I are like, oh, okay, well, your friends and you are going to be okay. Like, I'm just going to leave.
Yeah, we're looking at dungeon events a lot just between the seasons and player feedback to make sure that they're fun to play and people want to engage with them. And this is kind of one of those things that we saw. We're like, yeah, we could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so next we have traps. In our dungeons, the overall readability has been improved, and the crowd control on the player has been reduced. Look at that slow motion.
Slow motion action shot.
So it will be easier to see these, and more importantly, when you do get hit by them, you are not CC'd long enough to where you will just instantly die all the time.
Yeah, and I want to call this out so players. I want to make sure players are not confused about this. We're not just talking about CC on the traps, right?
Right. We're talking about just CC across the board from monsters. Just in general, like your CC time will be decreased.
Yeah. So if I get stunned by a vampire knight, I'm going to spend less time CC'd.
Right.
Waiting, yeah.
Right. Less time CC'd and less time going back and restarting the nightmare dungeon because you died.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is really valuable with increased density, of course, because there are more monsters on screen.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a pretty extensive amount of changes coming for CC. So when players get a chance to check out the patch notes and everything, they'll see the full run through of all the changes that are coming out for CC.
Yeah, very cool.
All right.
Instant
What else we
replay
got?
quality footage.
Yeah, I know. I do love this
I
footage.
can't get enough of it.
Yep. Oh, fragments. Interesting. I wonder what those are.
And also, our Paragon glyph experience has been increased. This sort of falls in line with like the 40% faster leveling to 100. You also will get your Paragon glyph leveled a bit faster so that as you are leveling up, your Paragon scales effectively with it, and you can feel more powerful faster.
That's it, though, right? Oh no, wait. There's a whole other section.
No, there's more stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, then sure.
You can't
Talk
have
about
nightmare dungeons without the afflictions,
That's
right?
true. Talk about afflictions.
So we have a number of changes to some of our afflictions. We are constantly looking at these and evaluating player feedback. The first one up that I have to talk about is backstabbers. So what it used to be was when a monster attacked you from behind, it just did a set increase in damage, which led to a lot of cases where players were getting one shot, right? So we changed this so that the close monsters attacks from behind will now cause you to become vulnerable, and then that vulnerable damage that you take is increased on a scaling metric. So the higher the dungeon tier, the more damage that you will take. This gives you a little bit more opportunity to have a bit of counterplay. It's not just all of a sudden like you're dead. Mm-hmm. You can play around this. You can react to it. If you manage to make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You can strategize and pivot so that you don't end up just immediately dying.
Yeah, I mean, just that vulnerable condition there does give you that opportunity to sort of see, like, actually, look, yeah, my health globe is cracked now. Yeah, okay, I need to be more careful as I'm getting hit, because creatures can do a lot more damage to me while I'm in this state.
Right. Yeah. For monster critical resist, now the monster attacks reduce the damage of your critical strikes for 3 seconds, and then this also scales by the dungeon tier. So now once again, if this happens to you, you have the opportunity to play around it, and it's not just completely nerfing your damage the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, people would avoid this one, this affliction particularly, because it was a massive reduction in damage overall, because you didn't have any control over it either, right?
Right. And just in general, what we want to avoid are afflictions that are instant salvage, right? We don't want you to look at your sigils and say, oh, I don't want to play that, and then just toss it every single time you see it. So this is sort of a greater effort to make this a bit more fun, so you can see it and know that it's going to be more difficult, but not unplayable.
Right.
Death Pulse. So we made some changes to Death Pulse. Now we prevent the Death Pulses from monsters that already have death explosions, like the lunatics. And we also prevent death pulses from spawning on top of each other or chaining with each other, so that you don't have to worry about an entire dungeon tile filling up with just death explosions that will one-shot you.
This is such a great change. So many times the lunatic explodes, and I'm like,
Yep.
all right, I'm all good. And then I run in and no,
The
there's
lunatic
more
was bad
explosions.
enough. Yeah. And yep, nope, we're good. There we go. Lightning Storm. Being shocked while in a bubble grants 35% bonus movement speed for 5 seconds. This is a change coupled with the other changes where it only starts with when players are in combat, and it only starts when you have a direct path to the protection bubble. These holistic changes were basically implemented to make sure that Lightning Storm doesn't slow down your Nightmare Dungeon exploration. What we were seeing a lot was players wanted to get through the Nightmare Dungeons quickly, but when they had Lightning Storm, they had to like stop, run backwards, go hide in the bubble, wait, then make up that lost time, stop, go backwards.
Yep.
So the movement speed bonus helps a ton because it helps you make up that lost time faster. And then these other two changes mostly focus on some of the more egregious examples where like a traversal is in between you and the bubble and you can't get to it in time, or for some reason it's just a little too far behind you and it's difficult to get to. These will ensure that you know when the lightning storm is going to happen, and you know there is a way to get to the bubble.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And finally, Drifting Shade. The duration of the Drifting Shade has decreased from 5 seconds to 3 seconds, and the respawn time has increased by 2 seconds. So similarly to Lightning Storm, we didn't want cases where the Drifting Shade pops up and then players spend more of their time running circles around the Drifting Shade than they do focusing on completing the dungeon itself. So this should make it a little bit easier for the dungeons for you to be able to navigate the dungeons with Drifting Shade and not just want to avoid it completely.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. More.
Yep, more Nightmare Dungeon
More
stuff.
changes to Nightmare Dungeon.
So this is, in addition to Nightmare Dungeons, this is also for our normal dungeons, but we changed some of the objectives for a handful of dungeons. You will see this in the Nightmare Dungeons for this season specifically, but we removed the objectives so that now when you go into the dungeon, all you have to do is really just go find the boss. You can focus on the critical path. There are dungeon events and other things going on that are optional, but if you want to go in and find the boss, you can just go in and go straight to the boss. So we're trying out this change. We're going to see kind of how it works with the dungeons that we've implemented it on, and we're definitely keeping an eye out on player feedback to see how they like it.
I know Rax, who's watching, has a tear of joy sliding down his face right now after hearing that, I'm sure.
And finally, for the pool of Nightmare Dungeons this season, like we do every season, we've went and evaluated the dungeon layouts, and we've redesigned a number of these. So for the ones that do have objectives, we've changed them to limit backtracking even further. But we also wanted to be conscious of making the dungeons just feel too linear. So we found a good balance where the player can engage in the objectives and the content without having to spend so much time running back and forth, which also contributes to the 40% increase to get to level 100. But as you can see here, here's one of the Nightmare Dungeons that we have for Season 2. In this first objective here, we had our elites that you needed to kill. They were kind of off in the wings, and it created these really bad situations where if you took a wrong turn and then you realized too late that you missed one, you'd have to go all the way back and track that guy down and waste a ton of time. So we moved these objectives to the critical path. So as long as you're just on the main path, on the main loop, you will encounter them. And even if you do make a wrong turn, the penalty for getting back onto the critical path is not that significant. So it's like just less downtime in between reaching these objectives.
All right. Next, we have a bunch of updates to world events.
Yeah, world events and Legion events and other things.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Let's bring it up. We have a whole other slide, I think.
There
it is. Yes. So yeah, we've heard feedback from players. They're looking for more uptime on some of these events. They're looking for more opportunities to go and engage with this kind of content. So we made some changes as part of Season 2. So right off the bat, Legion events time between events has been reduced from 30 minutes to 25 minutes. They're going to be more. You'll find them more frequently as you're playing. This is great because you do want to go farm these to get the materials you need to go fight Lord Zir. Particularly when you're in World Tier 4. So great opportunities for you to go and do these things. We've increased the duration of the warning timer. Moved that from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. One of the big reasons why we did this, and we did this in a few different places, but one of the reasons we did this is in situations where the player's like wrapping up a nightmare dungeon or they're just in an instance, we want to give them a chance for them to pop out and happen to see that warning is up so they know that they can go and try to chase that down. We also fixed like some minor issues here where like Legion event pins would not display at the edge of players' minimaps if a Whisper was active for that Legion event. So really, at the moment we really want players to go after like a Legion event, it wasn't really showing up. We made the same change for world bosses. Now for world boss spawns, similarly we made another change here. We reduced the duration between uptimes for the world boss from 6 hours to 3.5 hours. So these are going to be much more available for players to find and chase down as they play.
Yeah, it was something that, players have been talking about, hey, I have a set schedule, or I'm always at work when these world boss spawns occurs. So now there's more opportunities for players to end up getting their chance at a world boss, which is really good.
Yeah, likewise, we have increased the warning timer for these bosses from 30 minutes to 60 minutes to really let you know when they're about to start. You can plan to go and hit these because again, these have slightly higher drops for the Lord Zir fight, for example, and they still have good rewards attached to them as well. So those are up, and then we also made sure that there is now a message that's broadcast to all players when a world boss is 15 minutes away from spawning. So again, doubling down, making sure the players are aware the world boss is about to kick off, so you don't have those situations where you just missed it because you didn't realize it was up. So we think that these are going to be some changes that are going to help that quite a bit.
All right. Endgame activities.
Yeah, let's go. I can just keep going from here. So one of the things we found in Whisper Cache is it used to be when you got into World Tier 3 and you're starting to get your first like sacred sigils and such, that when you finish Whisper Cache, you got effectively like the lowest sigil tier key from that tier, from that world tier. So now the way it's going to work is when you go and you turn in all your whispers and you get your new summoning materials for Varshan, and you also get a random nightmare sigil on turn-in, that sigil is always going to be within 5 levels of the highest nightmare dungeon you complete in that tier. So they're going to be more relevant for you based on your current progression as you continue to go. So I think that's going to be a fun change for players. The next, so I really want to hammer down this. So gold rewards from Whisper caches have been really significantly increased, greatly increased. Greatly increased.
That's why it's in a different color. We want to very much emphasize greatly.
So if you're looking for gold for your build, whether you're trying to do like a massive respec of your character and you're looking for the chance to reroll many more times on an item to get exactly the affix that you're looking for, Whispers end up being a really great source of gold for you to continue to farm as you're getting into the end game and remain so as you go. So it's going to be a really, really big change for you to be able to engage with as you play. And then, so next up, I know Joe already talked about some of the changes we're making to experience in other places. Here, we've also made sure that like Whisper turn-ins, for all your bounties and the HellTide caches, the XP rewards from those moments are much more substantial in this point. We're okay with the idea that that nightmare dungeons remain a really great source of experience for players. That's fine. But we want to make sure that Whispers and HellTide features in particular are brought up to feel that they are more competitive with nightmare dungeons. But now that there's also the addition of these summoning materials that you need from these content types, there are also other rewards, and then even gold from Whispers. There's other rewards you're going to be getting at the same time. So while experience from Whispers is really dramatically increased, be really great, particularly on the 1 to 50, as you want to use more Whispers potentially to level up than you have in the past. There are advantages, no matter which way you want to go. And then, some minor things here. So Whisper caches, we're granting items from that reward moment that weren't always tied to the item slot associated with the cache. So we've gone through, we've made some changes on the loot side to ensure that won't be the case anymore. So if you go and you open a boots cache, then you're always going to get boots from that cache. So that's going to be a change. That's also, that change has been propagated to the HellTide caches as well. It shouldn't be the case anymore that you end up opening a two-handed weapon cache and you just get a ring or something along those lines. And then also, HellTide chests now also have specific icons on the map to indicate their type. So if you're trying to figure out exactly where rings could be found or where you could find light weapons or whatever else, it's a little bit easier for you to find those things from the map level as you're looking around. So some good changes for endgame activity stuff there.
All right. Next, we got some UI and UX changes I know that we're putting into the game. Joe, do you want to take us through these?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, players have been able to mark items as junk for a while now, and once an item is marked as junk, you can actually sell all junk in your inventory, which is pretty handy. But it's really sort of some players have different ways that they want to manage their inventory. They've got players who are like, I want to go back to town, and then I want to do all this, or I want to do it in the field. And so we want to provide more flexibility for players who like to manage their inventory in different ways to do that. So we've added the ability to favorite items, and of course, this protects from situations where you might have accidentally salvaged or sold an item that is really important. When you use the sort button in your inventory or in your stash, the aspects that have the same power will now be sorted together so that they're easier to find.
Yeah, helps out a lot more when you're trying to dig through your inventory and figure out exactly where things are.
Yeah.
This one is a little bit subtle. So when you're looking at the affixes that are listed on an item tooltip, so maybe you have strength and crit chance, something like that. The sorting of those affixes is now consistent within the type of affix that it is. So if you have two items that both have strength on them, the strength is going to appear in the same location vertically in the list of affixes, which makes it a little bit easier to evaluate
when you're comparing
two items to each other.
Exactly.
And a dungeon map tooltips. This is, I know, Adam, this is one that
this is one I like. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So they'll now display, when there's an active whisper, they'll now display the aspect name and the description. It's no longer hidden by the whisper being active on the dungeon.
Yeah, everyone's got one or two things in particular that are fairly small in isolation. They're like, oh, thank God that thing is changed. That one thing got updated, which is great. We're excited.
Mm-hmm. Of course, this is a really cool one. You can now search and filter your stash. And I think we have a video of this. This includes text search. You've got a bunch of different filters down there. Mm-hmm. You can filter by item type, item rarity. You can filter by sacred and ancestral items. Mm-hmm. And then you can see there at the bottom we've got a text box. So you can search for keywords and other text on the item. And this searches across all your stash tabs too. Yeah. So if you take a look at the top there, you can see that it's a little bit hidden by the tooltip right now, but you can see that there are 4 items in this tab that have that fill the criteria and none in the other tab. Or in this case, there are 3 in that tab and 1 in the other tab. So they're highlighted, so make it easier for players to search through and find items in their stash.
Yeah, another a hotly requested item from players
Absolutely.
As well. A lot of our UI UX updates in general are, fueled by feedback that we've received either through social media or on our forums.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have some more. Players that want to hide identifying information, like character names or BattleNet tags, for other players, can now find these settings in the social options menu.
That's right, streamers. You got streamer mode.
Streamer mode.
And this is a one that we've seen a lot of feedback on. Players want to be able to hide vulnerable, the status effect text. So vulnerable, dodge, fortified. This is an option that's been added to the menu to hide those, so you can hide them along with hiding the combat numbers.
Yeah, this is a direct response to everyone on X and other media platforms that will text on a regular basis asking for this option.
Yeah, they'd be like, I can hide the numbers, but I can't hide, fortify.
Totally fair. Happy to get this out to players. Yeah.
And we've added an auto run feature, so you can bind a key to auto run, and then you can the character will run in the direction that they're facing on a controller, or the direction that you the mouse cursor, where the mouse cursor is located. So you can start auto running, and then you can review your inventory, bring up the map, do those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then we have a lot of...
One more thing.
Oh.
I don't want to forget this
I'm
one.
like, see, we have so much stuff, and I know... I try to get ahead of myself. And I'm like, let's go to the next section.
This one is important. Antonio was talking about the improvements to Nightmare Dungeons to help navigate through them. This change to the minimap significantly zooms out the base zoom level of the minimap, and this will really help players navigate through towns, navigate through some areas of the world that are sort of more dense in terms of terrain and obstructions, and navigate in dungeons. This means that when you're in a dungeon, you can see more of the dungeon layout that's near your player on the minimap than you could before.
Yeah, if you're approaching a fork in the overworld, you're not sure which way leads back to the main trail. Like this is definitely a huge benefit for players. Right. Yeah.
And I know now I can get ahead of myself here. We have a lot of updates regarding items as well that we do want to kind of go over. So, Mr. Joey P.
Oh yeah, sure. Happy to talk about some things. So yeah, we made a few changes. I know that some things we've already talked about a bit before, right? But here, gems no longer drop directly as rewards. Now players can be earning these new gem shards, these fragments materials they can use at the jeweler to craft their own gems. So basically, as you're wandering through the world and you're killing monsters, you're opening chests, you're gonna be dropping these fragments as you play, and rather than having like individual items that go into your inventory, these shards are gonna go into your materials tab, and then as you want to create gems, you can go back to the jeweler. You can spend those fragments to create gems rather that will go into your inventory that you can then slot on items the way that you like. So it basically takes all of those gems that have been randomly appearing from completing events and opening chests out of your inventory, and gives you the option as the player to choose when you want to go and create gems that you need for your items.
And just to make sure people are aware, like, of course, when you do create a gem, it does then appear in your inventory, which then allows you to then, of course, sock it into an item. But now you won't be finding all those gems out in the world that will fill up your inventory. Those will just appear as materials now.
That's right.
Within your materials tab.
And you'll also be able to salvage those gems that you do create, and then use those materials to go and create better gems. So yeah, big changes there. It frees up a lot of inventory space. Feels good. Enchantment cost been updated. What a strange single line,
what
right?
a very general.
So the ultimate thing here that I want to cut to is enchantment costs overall have been reduced, but the way that works out is that your initial enchant cost is going to be a little bit higher than it is currently for your first enchant, the first time that you do it. And then the progression of the cost of that, of re-enchanting that item, is going to go up much more slowly over time, and it's not going to spike quite as quickly. So players overall, it's going to be a little bit less expensive for players to go and try to re-roll items to their heart's content to find things they're looking for. Now, and this partnered with the changes that we made to Whisper Bounty cash turn-ins, where you get like way more gold from at those moments. Greatly, significantly increased in those situations, are going to help those defer a lot of those costs for players if you don't end up using a lot of that gold to go and trade and do other things instead. So yeah, big changes there. Okay, so another really big change here is that when players get into higher world tiers, I'll read the line and then I'll explain it. So crafting materials will drop in place of lower item power, normal magic, and rare equipment in world tiers 3 and 4. And what do I mean when I say that? What I mean is when you go into world tier 3 and you start getting sacred items dropping for monsters, you will find that you will no longer be having normal items dropping for monsters. The only items that will drop for monsters in world tier 3 will be sacred in nature, they're equipable gear, right? So instead, when you would have got like a rare item before, that is going to be, you're going to get crafting materials that you can use instead, dropping on the ground if you just go run over and pick up, as opposed to having that rare item in your inventory. Now, this is another one of the reasons why we made this big change to the Whisper Gold increase. We made some other gold increases as well, to basically offset any concerns that players might have about needing to sell off all of those typical rare items, as they're progressing through. Now, I will say that if a legendary item drops for you that is of normal quality that you could have got level 50, in World Tier 2, if a legendary item drops for you, that will still appear for you in World Tier 3. So that you're not going to be losing out on legendary items that potentially could drop for you in part of the experience. When you go into World Tier 4, only ancestral items will drop for you as you're playing. You will no longer see sacred items or normal items from that point forward. Once again, legendary and unique items in that case of sacred nature or normal nature will still continue to appear for you as you continue to play. But For the most part, getting a ton of these items out of your inventory as part of this change.
Yeah, it's this and the gems changes are going to help out a lot with inventory management for players and ensure that they're focusing on like the items that they're really going to want, and then of course getting the benefit of getting all the materials now from the items that we're dropping beforehand. They'll just now be materials that will be in their materials tab.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's not even the end of the big changes we have planned. So another thing we're doing as part of Season 2, and again, this is on the Eternal Realm and also in the Seasonal Realm, is that when you start to go into World Tier 3 and 4, items that are dropping for you are going to get more powerful based on the monster level that you're fighting. This is in response to, so all of the item changes we're making in response to player feedback we've been receiving since preseason and Season 1. Season 2 represents the first really great opportunity that we've had to spend a good amount of time kind of responding to this feedback, getting things tested, getting things into the game. So we're really excited to offer things like this. But there's situations where players will get into World Tier 3, they'll finish off a lot of the gear that they need inside Sacred Tier fairly early, 50, 55, 56. They start getting ready to make the transition potentially early into World Tier 4 to get into their Ancestral Tier. And then that can end up in a situation where by the time that you are level 65, 68, 70, you've kind of collected all the Ancestral gear that you can get, minus uniques you might still be hunting for, once you get into that tier. But you might have already got all of the gear that you're looking for, particularly eye power-wise, as you're progressing through. Now the way that we've changed things is that starting in Sacred Tier, I guess we'll talk about Sacred Tier first. So if you fight a level 55 monster, you'll have the typical Sacred eye power range when you're fighting that creature. When you fight a level 56 creature, the eye power minimum and maximum of that range increases by 2. So every monster level from that point forward, the eye power of the potential output of that item is higher as a result of that, to encourage players to want to go and try to fight higher level, more difficult creatures as they're progressing through the game. When we talked before about the monster trailing change that we made, the monster level trailing change we made earlier in the presentation today, Joe mentioned that was kind of aligned with some other things we were trying to do to make sure the players felt they were getting more powerful as time progressed. And part of that is ensuring the players have a sense of progress as they go. And when we think about sacred and ancestral progression, when you're getting into that part of the game, one of the things we've wanted to try to ensure is that players do have the time needed to go and kind of gather items of value that they can use to put their build together. But we don't want the player to feel like in an effort to hit that solution, the feeling of not feeling and not getting any real progress past level 70 in this case, if you're getting into your ancestral gear fairly early, that's not worth the cost of making sure that you've got your time to get your things together. So instead, we want to make sure that you have opportunities for upgrades as time goes on, right? So in World Tier 4, starting at level 75, you'll have the typical range, but then that continues to go up by 2, for every monster level above that, so, going up pretty high. Once you get to level 100, now you're dealing with ancestral items of eye power potential of 920 at that point. And that's just at level 100, right? Once you start fighting higher level monsters than level 100, when you're fighting like level 101 monsters, level 102 monsters, the minimum range of the item output goes up by 1 for every monster level from that point forward. So you'll get to a point where you're fighting level 150 creatures and such, that the eye power range of that item, 175 monsters and such, the eye power ranges of those items are effectively on par. It's like 920 to 920 is like the end result long term as you go deeper and deeper into the system.
Yeah, so you start to shrink down that window.
Yeah, you slowly shrink down that window so that as you're getting drops for yourself in the world and in Nightmare Dungeons and other content types, it's much more likely to get the maxed out eye power rolls that you're looking for. Now, one change we didn't make as part of this is we didn't change the ranges on affixes that are attached to these. So the change that we're talking about here is getting you more weapon damage on your weapons, more armor value on your armor pieces, and more of the inherent resistance, which is so much more important now in Season 2 than it was in the past, attached to your jewelry. So that will continue to grow as you get more eye power for these gear pieces. So now this is naturally going to push players to fight more difficult monsters, and we want that. We think that's fun, right? But that's not, we want to make sure that other content pieces also provide the opportunity for meaningful rewards as well. So one other change that we made here for Whispers, for example, is that the caches that you get at the end of a Whisper turn-in, the rewards for that are actually 10 eye power better, which would say that they're 5 monster levels higher than what you would normally get, because usually rewards that you get from these caches are based on your character level at the moment that you turn these things in, based on the world tier that you're in. Now there's an offset, so you get additional item power value from the items that you get from that cache normally. And then, in addition to that, the upgrade caches, the legendary caches that can occasionally appear when you're turning in your whispers, those are going to give you 20 eye power above what your level is at that moment. Meaning these end up being compelling ways for players to want to go and try to collect rewards from engaging with these systems. Again, while they're earning tons of gold, and also while they are getting materials they need to go and summon the Echo of Varshan in World Tiers 3 and 4. And then next, of course, is HellTide caches also benefit from this same change, in that all HellTide caches, starting right in World Tier 3, have a 20 eye power offset attached to them for the rewards that come out of that. Now, a question that might get asked is, does that mean that that eye power value is going to go above the cap of what Sacred or Ancestral would normally provide? And the answer is no. So this does not mean that the very best items in the game are going to be delivered to you from Whisper caches and HellTide caches. Only that these changes allow these cache systems to provide meaningful rewards much longer into progression. And again, it was just tied to level.
And again, the eye power cap is you mentioned
920 for Ancestral.
920.
Yeah,
there you go. Because I know there's a lot of people asking 820, 920. So
yeah, we think that these are going to be some good changes for players to feel that they're getting some of those upgrades as they play through those content tiers in World Tier 3 and World Tier 4. They have a smoother journey as they continue to level up their character. This mixed with like the experience point changes and a lot of the Nightmare Night stuff that we talked about so far, represents a big, basically us trying to respond to like our experiences playing again, and then the feedback from players.
You know what? I'm gonna like go back to 20 minutes or 30 minutes ago when we were talking about the 5 bosses and being able to progress through them. One thing that we talked about Uber Duriel and how
Duriel, King of Maggots, His Majesty.
Exactly. Uber Duriel. But with all these new bosses, because they all have their own loot tables and everything associated with them, at least with Duriel, because that in itself is a level 100 boss. So what type of like kind of item power can you expect to find off of like Uber Duriel? Yeah,
you'll find eye power 920 stuff off Duriel. So there are unique items that Duriel drops that are only, some of them are very new and coming in with Season 2, that only come from Duriel that are just really powerful, right? And then there are the uber unique items that drop as well. Now, for the unique items dropping, there is a tighter range versus like relative to other bosses and other things. In general, unique items that drop from these bosses they're not going to roll the full like 75 eye power range. They're much tighter across the board as you kind of step up into the more powerful bosses. So I think the eye power range for Duriel, the eye power range for Duriel is much smaller than 75. I don't remember exactly what the range is specifically for that number, but that is increased. But the uber unique items that drop from that have a chance to drop, low chance to drop, but still will certainly drop from Duriel. Those are always rolled at cap, so they're always rolled at the highest eye power possible. And all of the affixes on the uber unique also always roll at the highest values possible. So when you get an uber unique item, there's not a better version of that specific uber unique item that you can get. That's always the very best one.
Yeah. So if you find a Shaco, you've got the very best version right there. So
yeah, you have it. Yeah,
that's awesome. Nice, cool. Well, I know we just went through a slew of changes and updates coming to the game. And again, like to reiterate, we still actually have more to talk about.
Yeah, we didn't talk about classes.
We didn't talk about unique items. We didn't talk about unique item changes.
We didn't talk about the damage buckets.
And I will note, like unique item changes, like I said before, like pretty much almost all unique items, or nearly all unique items, are getting some sort of update, which we will talk about on October 10th. I know a lot of people have asked for Mr. Adam Jackson to reappear, and he will be back on October 10th to talk about all the different class changes that are coming. And
he has been summoned.
He has been summoned. He's on vacation.
We got the materials.
He's watching though.
We got the materials to summon.
But yeah, we're going to be talking about all that stuff. We're also going to be talking about the resistance changes and stuff that we've been talking about already today, and how it's going to be much more valuable for people to be ensuring that they have it on like rings and all those other items.
Well, and there are changes to we're going to get into it, but there are changes to the way that it works. So, folks at home might be saying like, oh, that like there's a resistance boss, but like with the current resistance system, how is that going to work? And the 1010 stream is really going to explain it, how the changes work.
Exactly. And I will also note that on the 1010 stream, we will even be talking about the first update that will be coming even after Season 2 launches. And that's something that we can briefly talk about here, which is after Season 2 launches, we'll of course have additional updates that will be coming within the season, and each of these updates are going to be adding new things, new ways of being able to enjoy the content, and new features that players have been asking for. So we'll be actually showcasing what 1-1 will be in that October 10th stream as well. So people will get an early look of what the first update post Season 2 launch will be. And of course, we have a lot more to even talk about at BlizzCon. So if you are going to be at BlizzCon, make sure to check it out. Of course, we'll be streaming, and there'll be more information about, I know, the BlizzCon collection items and everything that will be available for players to be able to partake in. That will have items within Diablo 4, and of course items from other games that are going to be featured at BlizzCon, like World of Warcraft, Overwatch, and all the others. So.
But most importantly, at BlizzCon, you can bug Adam in person.
Yes, you can bug all of us in person at BlizzCon. So make sure to, if you are going to be coming to Anaheim, to check it out. And if you're interested in coming, of course, you can grab a ticket to BlizzCon, which is in early November. So should be good. First weekend of November, Friday and Saturday. All right. One other thing that we did want to talk about is there's some changes that are coming in regards to Smoldering Ashes for the free tier of the Battle Pass, because we've gotten a lot of feedback from players, and this kind of ties back to the experience items that we were talking about, where the tiers of the Smoldering Ashes were pretty deep in, and you would already be like a higher level and everything like that. And I know one of the big changes that we're doing is the character level requirements for those specific tiers with Smoldering Ashes have been reduced. So players will now actually run into those Smoldering Ashes and be able to use them. And they will automatically unlock now, which is really nice. Earlier within the actual Battle Pass as they're playing through, which is
so if you happen to like miss one when you're leveling up, which I think happened to a lot of players, certainly happened to me. It's like so now when you go back to the when you go and you actually open up the Battle Pass, you'll see that you've already unlocked those Smoldering Ashes. You can go right and spend those in your season blessings
and
benefit the friend right away.
On new season blessings, yes, there are 3 new season blessings for Season 2 that will be part of the new Battle Pass, of course. And of course, one other thing with the Battle Pass is there is going to be new town portal skins that will be unlocked and available for players as well. So of course, you can now change from blue town portal to different color town portal if you'd like, and there will be other town portal skins available in the Battle Pass as well. So
I like this angelic sort of feel to this
one.
Very cool.
Yeah, you can look like you're friends with Imperius, or like best friends with Imperius, with your new town
and again,
portal.
the free track.
Exactly.
Yep.
Imperius, Anarius, sorry.
Well, any of the angels.
Technically,
just pick
it would be more
angel.
orange, I would say, if it was Imperius to match him. So I've been playing some Heroes of the Storm lately. So
love Heroes of the Storm.
I've got Imperius on my mind right now. Well, we do actually have one other big news thing that we did want to actually talk about today as well, which is we are bringing more Diablo 4 players into the world, because we're here to announce that Diablo 4 is actually going to be launching on Steam with the launch of Season 2. So on October 17th, Diablo 4 will be available on Steam. Nice part about being on Steam, of course, is it carries over the same elements as all the other or all the other platforms. So cross-play, cross-progression will work immediately day one for anyone who does purchase on Steam. And so if you have friends on Battle.net and they prefer to play on Steam, they can, of course, play together from both sides, which is awesome to see. So Wishlist will be available immediately after the stream for Diablo 4 coming on Steam. It's really nice if you have a Steam Deck, it's another option of being able to play Diablo 4, because you can now take it like on the road with you, which is really good to see. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, lots of
Sanctuary on the go.
Sanctuary on the go, which is good. And by the way, cross progression and everything, of course, that works with the console players as well. So if you're playing on Steam, you'll of course be able to play with Xbox and PlayStation users from that end. But I'm really impressed, by the way, that we got through a lot of content here in a pretty efficient manner.
So fast.
We actually are going to go through some Q&A from everyone in Twitch chat. So if you actually have a question and you're in Twitch chat, feel free to ask the question. We'll try to grab as many questions as possible. And I'll use my trusty iPad and ask the questions and, of course, call out people's names and attempt to pronounce them correctly. But I know we will start off with one first question here as we grab more within the group. But what plans do you have for itemization?
Yeah, so we've obviously got a ton of feedback about the feeling of earning rewards in Diablo 4 and the feeling of like the power of those items and how interesting they are and how easy they are to compare and what the path towards getting like perfect items feels like and really what players are meant to do once they reach like that threshold of the game where they're trying to like fully like perfect their build. We have a lot of ideas of things we want to add on the itemization side in Diablo 4. The sorts of things I talked about earlier in the item section, like those really are just like some first small steps of the sorts of things we want to do. But we're reading through all this feedback. We have all like really interesting ideas and designs that we're working on the side. And we're excited to be able to bring those things to you over time. And we'll be talking about more of them in the future. But yeah, we have big plans for itemization for Diablo 4.
Yeah, I mean, really the themes here are more endgame stuff and improvements to itemization.
Yeah. All right. Quick question here from Cursed47. It's great to improve mounts, but what will you do to fix and address open world items? Teleporting from Nightmare Dungeon to Nightmare Dungeon sometimes isn't very fun and wasn't the best way to fix the time issue. Is there more plans for open world elements? Using mounts sometimes doesn't feel like it matters after a certain point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what is being asked there.
They're asking if there's going to be like some more plans for some like open world content or anything that will be on the open world. And I think a lot of this ties back to some of the stuff that you're actually seeing in Seasons, because Seasons actually ends up adding a lot more content to the open world, even with Season 2, with us being able to add additional objectives and everything for players to actually grab.
There are. We want to have a mix of gameplay that occurs in dungeons, which is core Diablo gameplay, and gameplay that's occurring in the open world. And so with Season 2, you see things like the
Blood Harvest,
the new Blood Harvest, exactly, and some of the changes like the monsters being on level with you in open world, and the changes that Joe talked about with item power based on monster power.
Yeah, in addition to that, just making sure that the various activities we have in Diablo 4 feel more rewarding to engage in on their own. One component of that being that the summoning materials that you need to go and farm these bosses that you want for these special unique items, and in some ways to go and challenge Duril as well for those uber unique opportunities. Like these represent, I think, good steps forward to kind of make these content feel more compelling in general. But as we continue to march forward and we're looking at, we showed the content chart earlier, with like all of the bosses and the way that we're sort of thinking about various parts of the endgame experience. There's a lot of room there for us to continue to create more distinct activities that appeal to different kinds of players, and also just continue to bring out like various kind of parts of Sanctuary to make things more fun and engaging for players. So this really is, again, like just the first step of the sorts of things we want to continue to add and inject into Diablo 4 over time, right? And adding more content to the overworld is a part of that. Particularly like, content that has like high monster density and is like fun to go engage with and slaughter monsters in.
Adding it and the relevance of the content in the world, right? Because if there's content in the world but it's not relevant, then it you're just riding past it, right?
That's absolutely right. Yep.
We have a question from these names. Legless puppy, which probably rolls around on wheels, and it's probably a cool puppy.
That sounds really sad, actually. In a way.
If they're on wheels, that's pretty cool.
I guess if it has wheels.
Yeah. Sure. Rolling on some good rims or something.
Okay, I guess Adam likes taking legs off puppies, but weird take.
Is there any chance of the level cap being removed off of Paragon glyphs?
Yeah.
Joe, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So we have talked before quite a bit about how we look at power progression in Diablo 4. Particularly, we talked a lot more about this like before launch, and a little bit before Season 1. But Diablo 4 is designed with the idea of kind of cap power progression sort of in mind. We want to make sure that we find the right ways for players to continue to grow the power of their characters as they continue to engage in the game. We will be looking for more opportunities for players, particularly as they reach level 100 and they're looking for more ways to get stronger and get more powerful. We want to find more ways for them to do that feel in ways that feel compelling and are fun, and don't feel like this extra task work they have to do in order to like take that next step, right?
Yeah, I think if I think about the reasoning behind that question, I think part of it comes down to, we talk about cap power progression, which has good reasons, like you're talking about, but also players are saying like, well, I ran out of stuff to do. Can there be more stuff to do, right? And so increasing the Paragon glyph cap could be one way to do that. The way we're doing it in Season 2 is through all of the endgame boss summoning mechanics.
Yeah, the endgame boss summoning mechanics, and then the vampire powers people level up as
That's
you go
right,
through the season,
yeah.
right? But yeah, it's not even just having more things to do. It's making sure that there are more things to do that impact the performance of my character, and I feel like there's more ways I can get stronger.
At endgame for yes,
Right,
yeah, that's
yeah.
a much better way to say it.
No, yeah, but I think that it's all fair, right? I think that there's room here for us to continue to add more of that, add more to that experience, particularly as the players level 100.
Yeah.
I look forward to more of those, updates as we continue to kind of march along.
Yeah.
Mavastra says, could we have a Paragon board reset button, or be able to buy reset scrolls for a set amount of gold or something? Won't talk about anything today, but
we'll look into it.
Wink. Yeah, what an interesting idea.
Wink.
What an interesting idea.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Next question that we have is from, I'm trying to pronounce these names here. Deyv. Question about Uber Uniques. Is there a chance for you guys to improve Uber Unique stats?
So Uber Uniques are going to be one of those things that are going to get discussed, I think, a little bit more next week when Adam is on talking about the content changes for classes and the various like item bucket changes and things, or the affix and skill bucket changes they've made. So I think that's a good question for that group to answer as part of that conversation. But I suspect that there are opportunities for us to make some improvements, particularly with some Uber Uniques.
Yeah. JJ Lafrite says, is the stash search usable for legendary powers and affixes?
Yes.
Yes, you can search through those. So it'd just be searching through the box or anything like that, because we do have that field that lets you actually look that up specifically from that end. Nelix87 says, are there any plans to give clans some love? Currently, clan management is very limited. Clan leaders and their officers has very minimal tools to track anything related to the clan. Are there like maybe plans for like clan stashes or more opportunities for clans to actually be able to, share?
Yeah, we'd love to add more social options, and in particular clan management tools, more cool things for clans to do together, and that's something that we'll have more to share on in the future.
Pewter Odin says, will we be receiving more coins in the Battle Pass instead of 666? And I know that there is a change this season for the Battle Pass, because there was a lot of feedback where players would receive platinum, and then they wouldn't be able to actually end up using that platinum to be able to grab something from the shop. You will be able to use platinum from the Battle Pass this season, because there's going to be options now that will meet that specific amount. So players will have some options available to them from that end. Bisepulus? Look, I pronounced it right. How many? Proud of myself. How many uniques will you add every season? Any news on set items?
So no news on set items just yet. So in terms of the number of uniques we're adding every season, we've been sticking to around 6 so far. There are more than 6 as part of season 2. So we'll talk more about that. I believe in the blog we talk about some of these numbers. But yeah, I think there's more than, I think there's like 12 uniques in season 2 right now. We'll be continuing to evaluate these counts as we go, but now that there's ways for players to farm these things, we're excited about trying to find more opportunities to inject some of them. But we also want to continue to add new legendary aspects as well, and more ways to kind of like create that build and kind of earn it more, before you hit like World Tier 3, right?
Yeah, and in general, season 2 is represented. Like, we think that there should be more in a season, and season 2 is representative of that direction.
Question from Fletchy. Good name, not biased at all. how is Duriel going to compare to Echo of Lilith regarding difficulty?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So Echo of Lilith is our pinnacle challenge boss. She is very, very difficult. And we've made some adjustments to her to make her a little bit easier for players of different builds to take down, which I think you've seen some of those changes even during the course of Season 1. But in Season 2, Duriel is designed not to be at that same level of difficulty. He is a little bit easier because you can use all the materials to go and fight Duriel and you could fail. Right, so like we want to make sure that if you have gotten your build together and you know the fight really well and you've got the proper amount of poison resist, which I recommend, that's going to make it a little bit easier to engage with overall versus the hard mechanical challenge that Lilith poses kind of separately. So Duriel is going to be less difficult overall to overcome than Uber Lilith in this way.
I'm going to try to combine two questions into one here because I think they're pretty similar in terms of, or at least we can talk about them both together. Team Loose Leaf asks, will the 5 new bosses you target farm be a permanent addition after Season 2? Don't answer that yet. Oh, you already did. But we can go to... Thanks, Joe.
You have to say it before.
I did. I was saying I was going to combine
two.
And then now I can't even find the other question, but it was related to. Oh, here it is. Fat Teppy says, "Do you guys have any plans for Eternal Realm content, something permanent that isn't just seasonal?" Which I do want to note because Joe just mentioned. Yes, the boss ladder items that we were just talking about will be going beyond Season 2, and then they also will be part of the Eternal Realm Day 1 with Season 2. So even Eternal Realm characters will be able to partake in farming those specific bosses.
And the items,
and the items themselves. So.
And yeah, the other side of that is just so we're going to be adding more content to the Eternal Realm beyond just these bosses. Yeah. You know, when we talk about, like, when we showed the chart of the content types before, and oh wow, it's already ready, already prompted. When we showed these things out before, once again, as a reminder, we do see that there's a lot of space in here for players in Eternal Realm and in Seasons to go and engage with different kinds of content at different points in progression. So we are excited about trying to provide more of those opportunities as we kind of continue on in development for Diablo 4. It's part of making the game better, is making sure that it's more fun at those stages, particularly World Tiers 3 and especially World Tier 4.
Yeah.
Question from Ice Gammon. Have you guys given thought to being able to craft specific nightmare dungeon keys rather than crafting over and over to get a specific dungeon?
Yes. We are still kind of talking about how we want players to engage in nightmare dungeons and what makes it most fun for them. So we're in constant conversations and we're looking at gameplay and analytics and also just general player feedback. And we're taking all of these things into account. So it is one of the things that we're thinking about.
All right. Question from Digital Wizard 91 regarding endgame boss mechanics. Is there any visual improvements to the readability of their attacks compared to, like, you know, other bosses or other encounters that we've had in the past?
Yes, there have been.
Yeah, I think I know we showed, like, really brief.
We showed some of the stuff on traps, right? But there are other visual improvements.
Yeah, and like we even showed like the boss, like, quick little intros as they're kind of coming in.
Right.
But like you can, at least with Gregor, like you can kind of see some of his mechanics that are in play there regarding the tiles, and you can clearly see where they're going to be hitting when encountering this this specific boss. So yeah, there are some changes for sure on that. BR Bulbul. Are you going to be able to save builds to a wardrobe like Diablo 3 potentially in the future?
Oh, builds, yeah, like you can with transmogs right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that we'd like to add in the future.
And
then you said that on stream before, actually. Now that I think about
it continues to be true.
Yeah, it continues to be true.
Has not changed. Is there any plans for this from Intrepid Gamer? Are there any plans for like adding a trade interface where players aren't having to actually use like other third-party tools, like going over Discord or something like that to potentially find opportunities to find, you know, other users that might have that?
Yeah, there's some light functionality baked into Trade Chat right now, but I think we're really, as part of the season, like with the material trains can be available for players to use to summon the bosses. I think we're starting to see players begin to stress the systems that we have, and based on their feedback, it's going to advise a lot of how we want to like think about trading in the future for Diablo 4.
Yeah.
So that's going to tell us about like UI UX enhancements we want to make and just general like improvements to the like the kinds of things you can trade, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Arcadium OW says, previously the idea of permanently upgrading our Codex of Power with extracted aspects was discussed. Are you guys still interested or looking into this?
We want to make the Codex of Power better in ways like that, and we'll have more to share on that in the future.
It's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people chiming in specifically in chat about like things like leaderboards, which we've already talked about. That is actually a
coming in season 3. Yeah.
Season 3 feature.
Yep.
So leaderboards are most definitely coming, and those will be available in season 3. Pugina TV says, do I need to buy the game again in Steam, or is there any source use of it in Steam if I bought it before? You don't need to buy the game again on Steam. It's your choice. If you prefer to play on Steam, you can. Or sorry, let me clarify. You do need to buy the game again on Steam if you want to play it on Steam. But if you already have the game, of course, you have the option of playing it on the other platforms, specifically from that front. There's some people that prefer to purchase games on Steam and have it available there. So they have that option now, starting with Season 2 on October 17th, when the game becomes available on Steam. Yep. So, trying to think here. I've now lost track of where I was because I was going down a list. Legless Puppy again has another question. Diablo, or at Diablo, is there any changes planned for glyph experience cap, removing or increasing the level cap on glyphs? Will give us more reasons to run Nightmare Dungeons on repeat.
Yeah, I kind of answered this a little bit before. So we are looking at ways to make sure that players feel like they've got good progression opportunities once they reach like level 100. They've capped out some of these sorts of systems. The exact contents of that, or like exactly what we're going to do, we're not ready to talk about just today. Yeah. But we are definitely aware of the interest in that particular solution, for example.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about the changes in Season 2 that relate to leveling up to 100. And a natural consequence of this is that more players are going to reach 100.
Yep.
And that means they need content to do. And that's something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about right now.
VZAT says, can Duriel drop 920 item power rare items or just Uber uniques?
No, the items that drop from Uber Duriel at that stage are not going to always be, like the rare items won't always be 920 eye power. They're going to follow the same range as if this were a level 100 monster. So there's still a 75 eye power swing on the rare item drops from Uber Duriel, or the Duriel, the King of Maggots, right? So that's really more the focus there. The unique items obviously will have a much tighter range than the 75 eye power swing of rare items, but the Uber uniques will always be at 920. But rare items, no, they will still have they'll still have a range. If you want to get a tighter range on rare items, then you can maybe potentially think about going and hitting Nightmare Dungeons of a higher eye power range, or a higher level range, because then you're going to start having the eye power min of the rare range start to go higher and higher with every new monster level that you fight.
A lot of questions about loot filters. Don't know if there's any plans or discussions regarding loot filters that you guys want to talk about.
I'll just acknowledge that being able to filter your loot is part of ARPG that many players enjoy, and we have heard that feedback, and it's something that we're exploring right now.
And then, let's see, there is a question from Misfit Dio, which is, will Nightmare Sigils rotate within the season, or will it be the same dungeons for the whole season?
It's going to remain the same set of dungeons for the season in the current format. You know, we can talk about what rotating them more frequently would feel like. It would mean invalidating keys after a period of time, you know, or having a smaller selection of dungeons overall that rotates more regularly. But right now, we've really focused on making sure that we've got, you know, the set of like 25 really exciting Nightmare Dungeons to engage with the season.
Yeah. All right, and we'll do one more question here, which is, actually, you know what, I know it's a question that a lot of people are talking about, which is stash tabs. And because obviously we have changes here for Season 2 that address a lot of inventory related concerns. Are there any plans for additional stash tabs in the future, or anything to discuss today?
I don't have any announcements on additional stash tabs, but what I can say is that we recognize that there continues to be a need, and that there will continue to be a need for more improvements to being able to store items. That's just players. It's an RPG. Players want to store a lot of items, And we're going to continue to make improvements in this area. You've seen some of them here today in Season 2, and we're going to continue to work on this.
Awesome. So took a bunch of questions here, and we went through all the Season 2, Season of Blood changes, or new Season of Blood mechanics that are going to be coming for players on October 17th. Again, Season 1, which is Season of the Malignant, actually ends on October 17th, and Season 2 starts also on October 17th. All the dates and times are actually going to be listed on a blog that will be live immediately after this this live stream. I will note that the plan is for Season 2 to actually start at 10 a.m. Pacific on the 17th. So if you guys want to pre-plan schedules or anything like that, you have that ability of being able to do so now. So we will actually be back here again for a campfire chat on October 10th with Mr. Adam Jackson, who will be going over all the class changes, class balance changes, class updates, as again, the resistance updates that are coming in within the game, along with the damage bucket updates for vulnerable, overpower, and critical strike damage updates that are coming, plus unique item updates that we are going to be covering off. Of course, we'll have a Q&A associated with that. So there's a lot to talk about on the 10th as well. And I will note that we do plan on having patch notes available on the 10th immediately after that stream, so people can read through what is currently 41 pages of patch notes for people to kind of sort through and read through all the changes that will be coming within the game. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Again, Season 2 is October 17th, and again, Diablo 4 will now be available on Steam. You can wishlist that now, and it will be available with Season 2 when it arrives. So we have a lot to talk about on the 10th, and to talk about 121 on the 10th as well. Right. Sorry, forgot about that. Our future plans with Season 2, and of course, more to talk at BlizzCon. So thank you guys again from the whole Diablo 4 team here at Blizzard. Appreciate you guys joining in, and we'll see you next week for the October 10th stream.
Thank you for playing.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, guys and gals, we're going to dive into this. How long was this? I don't even know. I got Diablo 2 up in the background. The objectively better game. First off, let's clarify this Steam comment. I'm really interested in what this Steam comment was. Where's the...
That's really more the focus there.
Future or anything to discuss today?
I don't have any...
October 17th. The same dungeons for the whole season. And then, let's see, there is a question from Misfit Dio, which is, will Nightmare Sigils
of a higher high power range, because there are higher level
Season of Blood mechanics that are going to be coming to you. So if you guys want to pre-plan schedules or anything, again, for a campfire chat, class changes, class balance changes, class up power.
To be a need,
man, going through this thing is going to be a pain in the
improvements to being able to store items. That's just players. It's an RPG.
They drop. They have a.
Let's go through some of the stuff that they showed off first. So let's go to some of their little bullet points. And let's actually record this because I'll upload this later. Here we go, guys. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So they just finished the Diablo 4 Campfire chat, one of 2, by the way. They got another one coming on the 10th. And they also said that patch notes for Season 2 would be coming on the 10th as well. They've given us a lot of information. And I'm going to sum it up for you right now before we even get into the nitty-gritty. Some of it is really bad. Some of it is really good. Some of it is kind of like, meh, why would you do that? Right off the bat here, you can see down at the bottom, they're adding Duriel into the as an actual killable monster, which is a campaign boss, which honestly a lot of people have been asking for quite some time, and I don't even know why he wasn't in there already. But there you go, you got a campaign boss to kill. Apparently he's going to have a small chance to drop uber unique items. which is going to be interesting. Apparently, they're keeping Varshan in, which I don't even know why they're keeping Varshan in. He's kind of a crappy boss. I'm being perfectly honest. I never really enjoyed fighting him so much as I just killed him for the loot. The there's also apparently going to be Lord Zir or whatever, which is like the new boss for the campaign. Let's move on to some of the changes real quick. So these are the 3 new bosses. Apparently, you got Duriel. There's a Beast of Ice. And I can't remember which one this one is. Lord Zir? I can't remember. They got all these vampiric powers and stuff, which I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I don't really understand why they're doing the vampiric power stuff. There's not a lot of precedent for vampire stuff in Diablo 2, and the stuff that there is, they're very much so like more like liches than they are like vampires. I'm not really sure why that's a thing, but it is. They've added the Scrolls of Escape for hardcore player disconnects, which is fine. As long as the Scrolls of Escape aren't like ridiculously easy to come by, that's a perfectly valid change. And then they got a bunch of new items that are coming too. Let's move on to the next one. I want to cover this stuff as fast as I can. The incenses now grant bonuses after death. That's a good change. The experience bonuses are now multiplicative within world tiers. So they talked about like basically it being like 40% faster to level up your character, which is a whole thing. I'm not really sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I guess leveling up your character faster is nice, but at the same time, if they make it too quick, I'm gonna hit level 100 in like a couple days, and then what do I do? They added some more unlocked waypoints to the campaign, which I guess is nice. It kind of sucked starting a new character and having all the like literally every single waypoint in the entire world was unlocked, and you had to ride around and unlock every waypoint. It kind of made the open world a little more tedious than it was normally, so I guess more is not bad. Renown rewards now persist between seasons and new characters. I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. I feel like they're just taking the renown system and they're just making it completely pointless at this point. It almost feels like at this point, why even have a renown system? Because they've pretty much taken away everything regarding the renown system that they possibly can at this point. There's no like actual reason to have the renown system anymore, because when you make a new character in the next season, you basically just get all the renown stuff for free at this point, right? So I'm just, it's like, why even have the system at all? Why not just remove it and just give us the bonuses permanently or something? I'm not even really sure like what's going on here or what their thought process is on the renown system. It's like we created a system, it didn't really work out the way we expected. Let's just completely destroy the renown system so that everybody just gets all the stuff for free. But honestly, if they just removed the renown system entirely, it would probably be better than just giving everyone the renown rewards for free. Is that just me? Am I the only one that sees it this way? That literally, like, they're just giving us all the renown stuff for free now? So it's like walking into a game and then the credits roll. Like, you load up the game and it's like, thanks for playing, here's the credits, and you're just like, wait a minute, I didn't even hit start yet. Like, why are the credits rolling? And it's like, thanks for playing, and then the game just auto closes, and you're just like, okay, well, all right, that's cool. I'm glad I paid $70 for the game to be completed for me. Overworld monsters in Tier 3 and Tier 4 no longer trail the player's level after levels 55 and 75 respectively. We need to talk about this for a second. This is probably the single most worst change I have ever seen in a video game in my life. Let's use World of Warcraft as an example. I know you guys might not like World of Warcraft, or maybe you love World of Warcraft. Whatever it is, let's talk about this change for a second, very seriously, okay? In World of Warcraft, let's say the level cap is 100. Okay, let's just pretend the level cap is 100. I know that there's item levels and item power levels, and the item power levels have been going up for forever. So technically the level cap is not quite the same as the item power cap and all that other bull crap. But let's just pretend that your character's level 100. All right? And there are let's pretend there are no level 100 areas for you to go to in the open world. So you ride around the open world, you search far and wide, like a Pokemon trainer, searching far and wide, and you cannot find any area higher level than level 75. Okay? All the monsters are ridiculously easy to kill. You stomp them into the dirt, right? So every single monster in the open world now is such a low level that you literally just stomp them all in the dirt. In an MMO, there's always areas that are high level, right? There's always an area that's like, oh my god, that area is like level 110. Don't go there unless you've got good gear, right? But they basically have just taken the entire open world, all of the open world, and they've basically just said, well, if you're higher than level 75, it's baby mode. And this has effectively created a situation where the open world is now basically useless. So to any player that is currently higher than level 75, once you start to get higher than level 75, you're basically just going to run into a situation where everything is going to be super duper 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 ridiculously easy. When I say super duper ridiculously easy, if any monster is more than 15 levels difference between you and the monster, you basically just stomp them into the dirt. Like, there's no challenge whatsoever. There is absolutely no challenge whatsoever when you have a monster that is more than 15 levels difference from you. So if they're 15 levels lower than you, at that point you basically just walk through them as if they're tissue paper. So the entire open world now, everything in the open world will basically be one-shots to any person that's like level 85 plus. No, the overworld is no longer going to scale past 75. That's what this says. So nothing in the open world will scale past level 75. In World Tier 3, nothing in the open world will scale past 55. So you're basically going to walk into World Tier 4 as a level 85 plus character, and nothing is going to challenge you whatsoever. Now, this is also compounded with the other change they made. Okay, so we need to talk about the other change they made, which I need to fast forward here for a second. By the way, they added 2 additional character slots. That's a good change. But let's talk about the other change they made for just a second here. So this is the item cap change that they made. Let's see if we can find this real quick, because this is important to this. And where is it? That's a really good change, by the way. The items marked as favorite. I was asking for that change for forever. Let's see here, because this one has to be talked about. Here we go. So higher level monsters in World Tier 3 and 4 drop sacred and ancestral items of greater item power potential. Okay, so what this means is that when you fight a monster that's a low level monster, any low level monster, you're basically just going to get crap item powers. So the new cap is 920. That's what they said. The new item cap is 920. So you're not going to find any items in the open world basically that are going to be useful essentially for you at endgame. So nothing that drops from the open world is going to be high enough item power to actually be useful. You're going to have to go to the higher level zones. And when you go to the higher level zones, you're going to have to farm, for instance, tier 50, tier 60, tier 70 dungeons. And when you farm these higher level dungeons, you're going to get the higher level items. But you're not going to get the items from the lower level places. All right, let's move on to the next one, because honestly, this one is probably one of the stupidest changes they made. Occultist has set up shop by the Tree of Whispers. I guess that's nice to have the Occultist next to the Tree of Whispers. Stashes have been added to all the small towns with the waypoints. I think that's a really good change. All the little small towns felt kind of useless because they didn't have stashes. They didn't have anything that they needed. They didn't have like any of the NPCs that you actually wanted in the small towns. So every one of the small towns just felt kind of like, okay, well, why should I go to the small towns? Let's just go to the big town. And so nobody ever really went to the small towns at all, for the most part. They're just useless, basically, right? So adding in additional things to the small towns, is my opinion, is a very good change. Extremely good change. Additional stashes, like I said, near the important vendors, very good change. Honestly, having the additional cities actually be useful, like in Diablo 2, for instance, all the cities have pretty much everything that you need. There's always a gamble vendor. There's always a stash. There's always a potion vendor. There's always all of the vendors in every single town. So having the small towns be useless was kind of very odd. Let's move on to the next one. The Purveyor of Curiosities being closer to the waypoints, I guess, is nice. Most of the time they were pretty close to the waypoints, but they're not like in this particular case, waypoint, Purveyor of Curiosity, it's actually right there. It's not even that big of a deal. The mounts being fixed is nice. The mounts are absolutely terrible. Being able to break through barricades is absolutely amazing. I like that. The barricade thing was promised like back in July, by the way. It was like July 28th. But as somebody pointed out in chat, this was one of the questions that they had later on, was that the question was basically this. It was, why go through all the trouble of fixing the mounts if we're going to teleport the player directly to the dungeons and make the open world basically less interesting? Here they decreased the cooldowns of the mounts as well. So this is a really good change in my opinion. Very, very good change. I can't even explain how many times I would approach a ladder and have to dismount to use the ladder, then go down the ladder and then have to wait, what is it, 10 seconds before I could reuse my mount, just because there was a ladder in the way. So people are saying that this doesn't mean that the monsters will cap at 75. People are saying that this means that the monsters will stop trailing you at 75, which means that they will no longer stop at 95 and instead will go to 100. Is that what you guys are saying that it means? So the monsters will be 5 levels higher than your character? Or sorry, the same level as your character. Is that what you guys are saying? That's not what it sounds like to me, obviously, because I completely said the exact opposite thing. I mean, if that's the case, the monsters in the overworld being 5 levels higher is not necessarily a bad thing at all. That's actually a good thing overall. But it still doesn't change, unfortunately, the other change that they made, which is basically that the higher level monsters will drop the higher item power items. So when you're talking about the 920 item power items, you're still looking at a situation where all of the open world monsters are no longer going to drop the highest item power items. So think about it like this. In the open world right now, if I go to a random event in Diablo 4 and I kill a random pack of monsters, those monsters will drop 820 item power items, right? You can get an 820 item power item from the open world. Correct? So they're still basically making the open world useless by taking the open world and going, this is the level of the open world that you can get, but the higher items are going to be locked behind the nightmare content, right? So you can no longer get the highest item power items from the open world. The open world is now basically going to be relegated to garbage equipment. Because if there are 920 item power items that you can obtain in higher nightmare dungeons, you're basically going to go, okay, well, do I want to do the content that has the ability to drop me the 920 items, or do I want to do the content that is going to drop me 820 items? They kind of have set it up at this point where the open world is basically going to be useless. I'm actually not even 100% sure if the HellTides will even be useful at this point. The HellTides in the current game at 820 item power drops are the same drops that you can potentially get in the Nightmare Dungeons. And the HellTides have been a success. I think most people, even people like in the Diablo 2 Discord that I'm in with the kinship, enjoy the HellTides, right? But what if we're talking about basically the HellTides no longer giving you the highest item power items? So you can no longer get like whatever the cap is from HellTides. Are you still going to be interested in doing HellTides if they can no longer give you the highest item power items? I mean, I know you guys are saying that I read it wrong, but it still doesn't change the fact that the open world is basically now being relegated to less useful items that are not going to be your endgame best in slot. Before, you could potentially farm an endgame best in slot item from HellTides and even the open world. And the change that they're making now essentially means that you can no longer farm any endgame best in slot items from the open world. Pretty sure that also means that you can't farm endgame best in slot items from the HellTides, which means that the only way you're getting the endgame best in slot items is going to be from Nightmare Dungeons and Duriel. So Duriel, they said, will drop 920 item power items. That was in the thing when they were talking about the bosses. They did specifically say that Duriel would drop 920 item power items. But they also said that to farm Duriel, you're going to have to farm a bunch of materials. So Duriel's not going to be a boss that you can just go farm. You've got to farm the materials for Duriel before you can farm him. And they also said if you fail farming Duriel, you can potentially lose those materials. So you're going to farm all the materials for Duriel, have like one chance at Duriel, and if you fail, you lose your chance at your 920 items. There's also no necessarily guarantee that you're going to get the item that you want either. So you're going to farm all those materials, go up there, farm Duriel, and, you know, a potential chance you're going to get nothing. This right here, let's see if I can pull this up. So this is the Blood Harvest, which I'm really trying not to sound entirely negative here because there were a lot of good changes. But the Blood Harvest really just seems like a reskinned HellTide. Which in the defense of a reskinned HellTide, because people do like HellTides, I think I enjoyed HellTides a lot. Personally. I really liked doing the HellTides. I think that was my favorite part of the game, quite honestly, is going to do HellTides. But at the same time, if we're saying now that the HellTides, and I would assume subsequently the Blood Harvests, which are also basically the same thing as HellTides, just reskinned with vampires, if we're saying that the HellTides and the Blood Harvest aren't going to give us the highest item power items anymore, and that potentially you're not going to be able to obtain those anywhere other than Nightmare Dungeons. Because it sounds like to me Nightmare Dungeons and Duriel are going to be your only two options. What's the real point of the Blood Harvest then? Because the Blood Harvests are going to be capped at what? What is HellTide's? 5 levels above yourself or 10 levels above your character? So they've been capped at like 110. And we don't know exactly what item power 110 is going to give us. And then they also said that the HellTides would be plus 20 item power over whatever the level of the HellTide is. So if the HellTide drops, say, 820 item power items, then you're going to be looking at 840 item power items from HellTides. But it's still not going to be... There's also another issue that's going on here. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the breakpoint system. So the breakpoint system in Diablo 4 creates items that are far more powerful than other items. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. There's an image that was floating around for a long time. Let's see. So this is the breakpoint system for Diablo 4. Okay, there is a item power range, and basically any item that is in like the 5 breakpoint is exceedingly weaker than the 6 breakpoint. So whenever you try and find an item in Diablo 4, you always look for an item that is in the tier 6 breakpoint, right? If they created a new breakpoint, a tier 7, then that's going to make basically any item under that tier 7 basically like completely useless. So you're going to have situations where, like, even if you do have, say, like a 900 item power item, we don't know where the next breakpoint is. It seems to be every, 100 points, so 624 to 724, 724 to 725. So you get 149. It's kind of like uneven in some of the tiers, like 459 to 624, but they seem to spread the breakpoints across from each other. So if there's another breakpoint, it's basically just going to make every single item that's under that breakpoint useless, which is basically what happened with Sacred Gear, right? So with Sacred Gear, unless it's 725 or higher, you really can't utilize the Sacred Equipment. And speaking of Sacred Equipment, they basically just removed Sacred Equipment entirely for Ancestral Tier. That was in here as well. So if we go back to... where is it? By the way, HellTide Chest having a specific icon on the map to indicate their type was a very good change. Very, very good change. I like that a lot. Oftentimes you'd have to hold your mouse over every single chest, and you just finding the chest that you wanted specifically for the type of item that you wanted was often a lesson in futility as you opened up the map and then got mobbed by a whole bunch of monsters trying to check the map to see where the chests are. And of course, knowing the entire time that if you died while you were looking for the chest, you would lose the HellTide Cinders, and then you wouldn't be able to open the chest. Because, of course, when you're checking the map, you're extremely vulnerable. So making it more immediately obvious that the chest type is the correct type that you're looking for without having to hold your mouse over every single one is a very good change, in my opinion. And probably especially for console players. I'm not sure exactly how that worked on console, trying to figure out which chest was which chest, but it looks like it'll be easier for all of us now. Let's see if I can find this. The world boss spawn time reduced. I'm not really entirely sure I like this one at all. The world bosses are already ridiculously too easy, and it gets to the point where literally in a season the world bosses are dead in about like 30 seconds. Unless they can somehow make these world bosses more difficult, increasing the speed at which they spawn doesn't really solve anything other than just flooding the game with more loot. I'm not really 100% sure this is a positive change unless they can make the bosses harder. And they haven't really been able to make the bosses harder, like, yet. I don't
I'm not entirely sure they can or they know how to, because at this point it just seems like every single time we go to a world boss at any point during a season, unless it's like the very beginning of a season when everybody's underleveled, the bosses just get deleted from existence within a matter of seconds. The Legion events having their timer reduced is not bad. The Legion events are basically just EXP. They're kind of fun. They suck if nobody shows up, though. They absolutely suck if nobody shows up. They also talked about basically being able to do the bosses. Where was it? Yeah, here we go. So apparently you no longer have to do the objective on a dungeon. You can just go straight to the boss. I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. I mean, it's kind of more similar to target farming in Diablo 2, I guess, where you would just ignore all the monsters and go straight for, say, Mephisto, right? But there are certain bosses in the game that you still have to achieve the objectives for in Diablo 2, like, say, Diablo. Obviously, you have to still kill all 3 seal pops. You have to kill Lord Decease. You got to kill Infector of Souls. You got to kill Grand Visor of Chaos. And all of these, basically, like... so basically, you're just going to be able to go into a dungeon, immediately run straight to the boss. So you'd be able to just run past everything, from what I'm basically seeing here. Just run past everything. Not really fight anything at all. Just go straight for the boss and just kill the boss. Which sounds really weird. I'm going to have to play around with this in the game and get a feel for this. I'm not really sure if this is a good change or a bad change. I mean, effectively, it does create a situation where you can farm bosses specifically. You can target farm like you would in Diablo 2, sort of. But at the same time, you're also basically just skipping the entire dungeon, which, I mean, I guess if that's what you want to do. Like I said, I need to get into the game and actually test that out. Let's go back a little bit further. They changed a lot of the mechanics, and honestly, when I was listening to them talk about the mechanics changes, I was kind of thinking to myself, why didn't they just remove them, to be honest, because they're not really good mechanics. Drifting Shade is a terrible mechanic. Anyone who's played Diablo 4 probably hates Drifting Shade. I every time I get Drifting Shade on like a Nightmare Sigil, I just delete it. Like I don't even bother. But they reduced the persistent duration from 5 seconds to 3, and the respawn time was increased by 2 seconds, so it will be less annoying. I guess. The main problem with Drifting Shade is not the Drifting Shade itself. It's the fact that there's a Drifting Shade for every single player. I'm not sure if you guys have done a 4-player game with Drifting Shade, but basically what happens is you have 4 Drifting Shades all spamming on you. And if you happen to be fighting a boss or something like that, you've got 4 Drifting Shades literally blocking the boss so that you can't even attack him unless you're a ranged character. So if you're a melee character and you're all on top of the boss when the Drifting Shades spawn, you basically just have to back away and just watch the Drifting Shades do their thing. And then wait for them to finish. And then once they finish, then you can go back in and you can fight the boss. And you have to rinse and repeat this over and over and over again. So it's just really painful. The Drifting Shade is just a painful mechanic that I don't think anybody really likes, and they probably should have just removed it. I mean, it being fixed is a good thing. I will say it is a good thing that it is being fixed, but it probably would have been better off just removed. Lightning Storm also got fixed. Apparently, it no longer gets stuck on objects. So Lightning Storm was actually a physical like entity that followed you around, and when the bubble starts, it always starts on the physical entity itself that was actually following you around. So when you went, like, jumped across the platform, when you went down a ladder, when you went up a ladder, when you traversed any kind of thing that the little entity couldn't do, it would get stuck, like, at the top of the ladder. And then you would have the bubble spawn at the top of the ladder, like, way back there, and there was no way that you could get to it. So they're basically saying that the Lightning Storm will only start if the player has a direct path to the bubble, which is a very good change because that prevents the bubble from, or the lightning from even spawning unless you can actually get to the bubble. So if the bubble's stuck like on a ladder, like, 300 yards back, it's not going to shock the crap out of you, which is a good change. It also says that it's not going to do it unless players are in combat, which means that you're not going to die AFK at the beginning of the dungeon or like at the end of the dungeon after the boss is dead, which is a good change also. Apparently being shocked while in the bubble grants 35% movement speed, which I guess is kind of neat. One of the main issues, though, that I have with Lightning Storm, and that they didn't really address here, is that the bubble can often be overlapping with ground-based damage effects. So if you're in combat and you're fighting a bunch of monsters, one of the problems is the bubble will spawn, and then ground-based damage effects will be underneath of the bubble. So to survive the lightning, you have to get into the bubble. But inside the bubble is a bunch of damage effects which can kill you, and the bubble doesn't protect you from damage effects. Not like a regular bubble does, because the lightning storm bubble only protects you from the lightning attack itself. It doesn't protect you from the monsters, the elites, the ground-based effects, the explosions, and all that other stuff. So a lot of the times when the lightning bubble actually spawns, it spawns in a place which is very bad. And then you have to go in and actually stand in the bubble, which can potentially cause your death, because to protect yourself from the lightning, you also have to expose yourself to whatever is in the bubble, which isn't exactly the best mechanic. I would have preferred if they made the bubble make you immune during the time period when the bubble is active. Maybe just immune from ground-based effects. Maybe not monster attacks, but ground-based effects specifically, because it's forcing you to stand in the ground-based effects. So the least they could do is have the bubble protect you from those ground-based effects. They changed the Backstabber mod so that it's no longer, like, what was it, like 200% damage or whatever? So instead of it being 200% damage, it's just going to make you vulnerable by a percentage depending on the level of the monster. So the percentage is going to be variable. My problem with the Backstabber mod is basically that some players can't avoid it. Certain players can. You can definitely like pay attention on certain characters, and you can definitely avoid the Backstabber mod. But like the Whirlwind Barbarian, it's specifically as an example, can't actually avoid it. Like when you whirlwind through a monster, and the monster is attacking you as you're whirlwinding through, he's always going to hit you in the back. It's a thing that we discovered as we played Whirlwind Barbarians, that they always basically get hit in the back when you're whirlwinding. Because at some point or another, your back is always facing them when you're whirlwinding. I don't know why that's even a thing. And it's kind of crappy for those characters specifically that can't avoid the Backstabber mod. Maybe they could do something to work on that specifically, like pay attention to like the Whirlwind Barbarian as an example, and fix that issue with them so that they're not constantly getting backstabbed while they're using the Whirlwind ability. The monster critical strike resist apparently has been reduced. Monster attacks reduce the damage of your critical strikes for 3 seconds by X%, stacking up to Y. So it used to be a flat amount, and now they're making it a stacking buff. So if you can avoid getting hit, apparently, you can avoid the critical strikes. So this is an overall nerf to the monster critical strike resistance. It's like instead of it being a direct nerf to your damage to the monster, they're making it so that when the monster hits you, it's a direct nerf to your critical strike, which stacks up to a certain percentage. Which means that if you can avoid getting hit, you can avoid the debuff. Whereas before, the debuff was flat, and also you couldn't avoid it because it was applied directly to the monster. So they changed that completely so that instead of it being applied to the monster, it's now applied to you. And I think they also reduced it by a bit because it's a stacking buff, which means that you can avoid having it stacked to its maximum potential. The Death Pulse thing, they talked about the Death Pulse thing, and the changes to Death Pulse are definitely good. So the Death Pulses will no longer stack on top of each other. One of the things that you would often have happen is, especially like on the sorceress, for instance, if you were using the armor that lets you teleport, you would teleport in, it would suck all the monsters in, right? The Raiment of the Infinite. It would suck all the monsters in, stun them, you would kill them, right? And as soon as you killed, like, say, 50 monsters all on top of yourself, they would all death pulse. 50 death pulses all at once, right? And if you didn't move out immediately, like say you got stunned or frozen or any other number of crowd control effects, and you lingered just a little bit too long, all of those 50 death pulses would go off at the same time underneath your feet, one-shotting you, right? Well, what they're saying now is that the death pulses will no longer spawn on top of each other, which means that they're not going to perform that 50 death pulse one-shot anymore, which is certainly very interesting. I think that it's a good change overall, but I'm actually kind of concerned how that's actually going to work. So what happens to the other death pulses? Do they just not spawn at all? Do they spawn in different places? Do they spread out like across the entire map or something? Like if I kill 50 monsters in one place and all 50 monsters have a death pulse, do they just kind of like spread out? Or is it just going to be one death pulse in the same place? Is that just going to be the tactic from now on, which is basically like just pull all the monsters into one spot so you only get one death pulse as opposed to 50? It'll be interesting to see how that works. They also said that the death pulse will no longer go off on monsters that also have death explosions. So if the monster has a death explosion, like those little evil little blowy up dudes, and they run up to you, you know, and they blow up in your face, they're not going to also death explode after they blow up, which I think is a good change too, because that does reduce the overall ridiculous Dance Dance Revolution explosions that are constantly happening, just like non-stop, right? Let's move on to the next one here. I know I'm kind of going backwards, but I'm just covering everything that I can as quickly as I can. The Paragon Glyph experience has been increased. Not necessarily a bad change, but also not necessarily a good change either. The Paragon Glyph experience was often the only reason you went to Nightmare Dungeons of higher tier. So making it so that you can level up your glyphs faster just means that you're going to have less of a reason to go into the Nightmare Dungeons. They did, however, give us the higher item power items from Nightmare Dungeons. So they took away the glyph experience, made it easier for us to level up our glyphs, obviously. But when those things are capped out and you have no reason to go to the dungeon anymore, you'll still have a reason to go to the dungeon, which is finding the higher level item power items. So I guess they traded one thing for another there. I mean, being able to level up your glyphs faster is definitely going to make you be able to get more powerful quicker. But then you're still going to have to hunt those higher item power items. Traps overall readability has improved. CC overall has been greatly reduced. So basically what they showed off with this traps thing was they actually showed that like you could see the trap happening in advance. I think they had an example here. I think this was the example. So she's running along and there's like a trap on the ground or the CC, and you can actually see like the effect of the CC before it happens. Let me see if I can go back and kind of like frame by frame it. It's terrible quality. Why is the quality so bad? Is it not set to like... Just make sure it's set to 1080p. So see right here, there's this kind of like barely visible circle, which represents a crowd control effect, which is apparently going off. This crowd control effect is kind of like a notifier that the crowd control effect is happening. So that you can then potentially avoid said crowd control effect in advance, making it more skill-based play. See how it was on the screen for a considerable period of time before the crowd control effect actually started, which does give you an ability to potentially actually dodge said crowd control effect. And then once the crowd control effect actually goes off, it's very obvious. So as you can see here, once it actually goes off, very obvious that the crowd control effect has taken place. But giving the ability to see the crowd control effect in advance like that definitely makes for more skilled gameplay in general, because that way you can, of course, avoid the crowd control effect much more easily, instead of just constantly being crowd controlled all the time by everything. That's certainly not a bad thing. I'm a little bit... Is a dungeon event monster density increased? I thought they already increased the density of the monsters. Last time I went in there, the dungeons were like insane density. Like to the point where literally you would have like freaking 5 or 6 elites in the same pack. I don't really know what they're doing here. I mean, are they making it even more dense? Or is this just the events are being increased to density? So, like, you know, like when you do like the Altar of Bishibosh and things like that, it's basically what, I guess, what this is talking about. The NPCs no longer getting one shot. It's hilarious. It's actually was hilarious that they actually admitted that this was a thing. I didn't think they were ever actually going to fix it, let alone admit it. But if you ever played any of the higher tier world dungeons, and you went in there and you did one of the events, like the ones that had like the little survivors that you had to save, they would just get one shot by anything. Like a baby, like one of the little baby spiders would just walk up to the NPC and just go, "Ding!" And then he would just fall down. And you're just like, oh, okay. It made it next to impossible to actually save any of the NPCs. And we managed to do it a couple times, but it took some really overwhelming force to save the NPCs. I mean, you had to be so Johnny on the spot that nothing ever touched the NPC. Otherwise, they weren't surviving. They would just get one shot by whatever. Teleporting to Nightmare Dungeons. I know a lot of people think this is a good thing. I'm not really too excited about this myself. I mean, I kind of liked running to the dungeons. I know I'm an idiot. I liked going to the dungeons. I liked seeing the open world. I liked kind of riding through things and randomly finding, you know, like loot goblins and stuff. And I can totally understand why some people would be really excited about being able to teleport directly to the dungeons. But I feel like it takes away even more from the open world aspect of the game, so that the open world aspect of the game just means even less. I mean, I feel like most of the changes that they're making now are making the open world even less important and even less useful. I mean, the item power change to 920 and then being tied to the Nightmare Dungeons means the open worlds will no longer drop the high item power items. Like, being able to teleport directly to the Nightmare Dungeon means that now nobody's going to experience the open world unless they actually go there specifically. So you're no longer going to be teleported to the location. They're just going to throw you right in the dungeon, which means you'd actually have to leave the dungeon to be able to even see the open world aspect of the game. So you're not going to ride there. You're not going to find any loot goblins. You're not going to do any of that stuff. It's just going to take away even further from the open world aspect. They're just making it so that nobody wants to go to the open world at all. And eventually, it seems like that's kind of like what they're moving towards, is that the open world doesn't matter. We know we made this big giant open world for you to go in, and you have a horse that you can ride around in the open world, but the open world doesn't really matter. Don't worry about that. Play your HellTides and do your Nightmare Dungeons, which is kind of silly. And that's why that one guy asked the question toward the end. It was around here somewhere. He was like, why bother fixing the horses at all if everything is just going to teleport you directly to the dungeons and you can't use the horses in the dungeons? And he was basically kind of like making a rhetorical sort of silly question, and I don't even know how that one made it through their censors. I thought that one would have probably gotten censored out. All the mount changes. I mean, the mounts were horrible. They were absolutely horrible, so obviously having the mounts be updated was definitely a good thing. The movement speed, the responsiveness, the cooldowns, all of that is good. We already talked about that, though. If you don't do Nightmare Dungeons constantly at this point, Jareth, you're going to be like much weaker than everybody else. So they basically set it up so that the Nightmare Dungeons are the only things that are going to drop like the high level stuff. With the exception of Uber Duriel. So if you do Uber Duriel and the Nightmare Dungeons, you'll get the 920 item power items. But if you don't do Uber Duriel and the Nightmare Dungeons, then it looks like you're just going to be stuck with lower level gear. So everybody else will just be higher power level than you. I guess if you're okay with that, I guess you can just run with the lower power gear. All of the changes to the cities were good. We already kind of covered these earlier, though. Two additional character slots. Let's see what else we got here. They covered a lot of stuff in this video. They really did. They weren't lying when they said they were going to cover a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to figure out what the difference is between these. They were talking about the difference between the two dungeons, and I mean, they both seem kind of the same to me. The quest objectives are off in an area on their own. The quest objectives are still in an area off by their own. Like, there's no change there. The boss is no longer locked behind it. No, because this is the Malignant. The boss is locked behind a door. So there's a locked door here in the Season of Blood, but there's no locked door here in the Malignant. So you have to do the, I thought they said you could skip right to the boss. I thought that was the whole change in the Season of Blood. They still just seem mostly the same, though, with the exception of this locked door here. I'm not exactly sure what that even means. Let's listen to him talk about it one more time. Let me unmute this.
Without having to spend so much time running back and forth, which also contributes to the 40% increase to get to level 100. But as you can see here, here's one of the nightmare dungeons that we have for Season 2. In this first objective here, we had our elites that you needed to kill. They were kind of off in the wings, and it created these really bad situations where if you took a wrong turn and then you realized too late that you missed one, you'd have to go all the way back and track that guy down and waste a ton of time. So we moved these objectives to the critical path. So as long as you're just on the main path, on the main loop, you will encounter them. And even if you do make a wrong turn, the penalty for getting back onto the critical path is not that significant. So it's like just less downtime in between reaching these objectives.
Okay. So I think I understand what they're talking about here, which is, notice how in the Season of Malignant, the objectives were kind of like off in little caverns. So like the boss here is in a cavern, this little boss here is in a cavern, like off by himself, right? A dead end, like specifically like a dead end that they're in. So dead end, dead end, dead end, dead end, and then one is on the path. Basically what they're talking about is they placed the monsters that you have to kill for the objectives actually on the path instead of in the dead ends, so that you wouldn't accidentally miss them. So as you're running along the path, if you're just following the path and you don't go down the dead ends, you won't miss any of the monsters because they're going to be more strategically placed along the path, which I guess is all right. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to the dead end thing, but yeah, it's I guess it's a good change. I'll say it's a good change.
All right. Next we have.
So right off the bat.
All right. Let's see here. Nightmare sigils from the Whisper caches will now always be within 5 levels of the highest nightmare dungeon the player's completed. So if you guys have never had this happen, you go complete a Whisper cache, you're level like 100, you're doing like freaking tier 70 dungeons easily, right? And then the Whisper reward gives you like a level 20 dungeon or like a level 15 dungeon or something stupid like that. And what do? You take that 15 dungeon key and you go destroy it, right? Or you just drop it on the ground because it's worthless, right? So this is a good change. Basically, they're just making it so that the Whisper caches will actually give you the Nightmare Sigil that you actually would use. So whatever your highest level Nightmare Sid dungeon is completed, it's going to be within 5 levels of your highest dungeon. So I'm assuming like +5, -5. So like if you've completed a 75, it might be like a 65 or a 75. or 70, 65, 75, etc. Like, or if you completed 75, it'd be like 70, 80, which is a very good change in my opinion, because like most of the Whisper caches, when they gave you sigils, you just threw them away. I'm not really 100% sure what the gold increase from the Whisper caches. I mean, I guess having more gold is nice. You spend a lot of it re-rolling items and stuff, so at least having more gold is certainly not terrible. Especially when you start getting into multiple characters. I'm not sure if you guys have gotten into multiple characters on Diablo 4, but when you get into multiple characters on Diablo 4, it definitely makes it very painful gold-wise, because you start running out of gold relatively quickly, re-rolling items and whatnot. And I don't know, just having more gold in general is nice. The HellTide and apparently and Whispers have gotten their EXP increased substantially. The Whisper caches now adhere to the item slot of the cache. So this was something that was weird that I noticed too, is that you would say get the cache that says armors, or get the cache that says weapons, or get the cache that says boots or whatever, and it would drop you like a sword. Like, you're like, why did the sword come from my boot cache? Or like you'd get the armor one and, you know, some pants would drop or whatever. It did seem kind of odd. So, I mean, what was the point of picking a specific cache if it was just going to drop you whatever anyway, right? So it seems like the caches are going to drop the correct loot now, which the Whisper caches aren't even really all that great anyway in terms of item drops. But I guess at least you get the item that you're actually looking for. We already talked about the HellTide specific items on the icons on the map. That's a good change. Where is the favorite? Being able to mark the item as favorite was a very good change also. I accidentally sold a couple items myself. This one is kind of interesting. Being able to sort your inventory, and then the legendary powers that are the same will be grouped together. So if you have like 6 or 7 of the same legendary power, when you sort your inventory, they'll all be put right next to each other so you can compare them easier, which does seem pretty useful. Sorting of normal app fixes on items has improved more. They did that once before, and it seemed to be an interesting change. Made it a little bit easier to compare items. This was a very simple change that honestly was kind of needed. Is that a lot of the times if there was some other activity associated with the dungeon, it wouldn't show you like the aspect name that was associated with the dungeon. Like you couldn't see what was going on in the dungeon because there was a whisper associated with it. So that's a good change. The stash being able to be searched. Now, they told us they were going to add a search bar to the stash. They didn't say anything about these filters. I'm actually very impressed with the filters. You can filter by weapon, armor, amulet, gems, potions, and I'm assuming that's affixes. You can also sort by blue, yellow, legendary, unique, and sacred or ancestral. Those filters right there, especially if you can cross filter them, so I can do like multiple filters at one time, like all unique weapons of ancestral quality or all unique weapons of sacred quality, that is actually going to make searching the stash a lot easier. The search bar, I wasn't too enthused about, but these stash filters, I gotta say, that is a very, very good addition. Very, very good addition. I think that's going to make searching your stash a lot easier, just in general, so that you can quickly find the items that you're actually looking for. So if you're looking for your stash and you want to find your Frostburn gauntlets, you could very easily just go like, you know, ancestral, unique, and then maybe you could throw in armor. So ancestral, unique, armor, bam, and then you have all of your ancestral, unique Frostburns and all the other ancestral uniques as well. But at least it'll filter out pretty much everything from your stash. Or maybe you're looking for a legendary weapon, right? So you could do legendary weapon, ancestral, and then bam, you've got all your ancestral legendary weapons showing up. It's still going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt because you may have like 30 legendary ancestral weapons, but having the filter there is definitely going to limit things to a much more agreeable level, make it a little bit less anxiety inducing like it currently is, which it's a good change, a very good change overall. I like the filters. I think most people are going to enjoy those filters. Wait, what was that one? I know what all of them are except for that little icon. Let me go back. Sigils. Okay. So that one is sigils. Alright. Streamer mode. Players that wish to hide identity information such as character name or BattleNet tag. I mean, it's an interesting one. I don't particularly ever use that because you guys are more than welcome to shoot me a friend's request. As long as you're not a douche, I won't ban you. Doesn't bother me none. Combat text has been added, option for hiding text. So this one is an amazing change, and I'm super excited about this one. I cannot believe it took this long for this one to get added into the game. But for those of you who, like me, who do not like having the entire screen covered in 10 trillion billion numbers, vulnerable notifications, dodge notifications, fortify notifications of all type and all sizes, being able to hide those is definitely a very, very, very nice thing. I really, 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 really like this. This one is going to be used by me. You can frickin' bet I'm going to probably turn all three of these on, and also hide combat text. I don't even really like the combat text unless I'm trying to like troubleshoot my character's damage output. I'd much rather prefer not to see the combat text, and honestly, before, even if you turned off the combat text, you still saw the vulnerable, dodge, and fortify, right? So this is just the ability to hide the additional things that were annoying the crap out of us. Auto run being added. So I'm a little bit on the fence on this one, whether this is a good or a bad feature. I'm not entirely sure whether I think that auto run is a good feature or a bad feature. And you might be like, what are you talking about, Ginger? Auto run is definitely a good feature. You can totally use that and have lots of fun with it. But the problem with auto run as a feature is that it makes the game more automatable. And what do I mean by automatable is that, well, it's useful for bots. Like when you have bots, and especially if they're like following each other around, and you have like in MMOs, have you ever seen a like a 6 multi-boxer where it's like 6 players and they're all following each other around and one guy is auto running, and like it just makes the automation of everything a lot easier for the bots. It's good for us though. I'm not going to say it's ever going to be bad for the player. It just, for some reason or another, when you added more automation features like auto run and auto follow and things like that, it does make it easier for the bots to do what they're trying to do. One way or another. It's a good change on one side and it's a bad change on the other. I think for the players though, you can't really just like smack the players in the face with a fish just because the bots are having an easier time. Minimap can be zoomed out finally. The minimap is one of the major things that I think a lot of people had gripes with. It wasn't really zoomed out far enough. You couldn't really see enough. You couldn't really like make a let's just say that the minimap was so bad that most of the time you would just open the regular map, right? Because why even bother looking at the minimap when it basically shows you nothing? So you would just open up the regular map and look at the regular map instead. So at least being able to zoom out the minimap now and customize it to more of a zoom level that is agreeable to you specifically, that is a very good change, a very, very good change indeed. Maybe that'll stop us from having to check the big map as much, because quite honestly, every single time we check the big map, we end up getting killed by monsters because the monsters seem to have like ninja map, like he's checking his map, get him skills. Like I'm not even joking. I'll be standing there sometimes and nothing will come out. Like I'll take a look left, nobody. I'll take a look right, nobody. I'll look behind me, nobody. I look in front of me, nobody. I hit the map key and all of a sudden a monster will just like pop out of a rock somewhere and just hit me in the back of the head. And I'm like, I don't even know where the monster came from. Like I legit looked around to make sure there was no monsters before I hit the map key, but like as soon as you hit the map key, they just pop out and start like donking you in the back of the head with a blackjack. If you guys don't know what a blackjack is, it's like a leather bag filled with lead. And in the old days, they used to walk up behind people and smack them in the back of the head with a blackjack, and it would immediately knock them out. Gems no longer drop directly as rewards. Now players will earn gem shard materials that they can use at the jeweler to craft gems. That one is kind of interesting. So I originally thought that they were going to change it so that gems would just simply drop and turn into materials. But that's not what they did. According to this, what they're saying is that you will no longer get gems as drops. At least if I'm reading it correctly. I know I've already read one thing incorrectly before. Let me humble myself. But, so, if I'm reading it correctly, gem shards to gems, right? So we have to actually craft the gems before we can get them. So we're going to kill monsters. The monsters will drop gem shards. We collect the gem shards, we go to the gem vendor then uses those gem shards to craft the gems that we need, which means that the gems will still be in our inventory, but not the gem shards, which will be materials. I think they had a graphic for that. Am I not mistaken? Wasn't there a graphic? Let me just play it real quick and see if the graphic shows up. But that seems like a good compromise in my opinion, because I didn't really like the idea of the gems being materials. I liked having the gems in my hand. I mean, don't most people like having like diamonds in your hand? But anyway, so it's kind of an interesting compromise to turn them into gem shards that you find, and then you go to the vendor and you actually craft the gems. So you're still going to have gems from what it sounds like. Like there will still be gems in your inventory, in your stash or whatever, but you actually have to make them, which is nice. Enchantment costs have been updated. Let's listen to that one real quick because I can't remember what he said.
So yeah, big changes there. It frees up a lot of inventory space. Feels good. Enchantment costs been updated. What a strange pseudo line,
what
right?
a very general.
So the ultimate thing here that I want to cut to is enchantment costs overall have been reduced, but the way that works out is that your initial enchant cost is going to be a little bit higher than it is currently for your first enchant, the first time you do it. And then the progression of the cost of that, of re-enchanting that item is going to go up much more slowly over time, and it's not going to spike quite as quickly. So players overall, it's going to be a little bit less expensive for players to go and try to re-roll items to their heart's content to find things they're looking for. Now, and this partnered with the changes that we made to Whisper Bounty cash turn-ins, where you get like way more gold from the at those moments. Greatly, significantly increased in those situations, are going to help those defer a lot of those costs for players if you don't end up using a lot of that gold to go and trade and do other things instead. So yeah, big changes there.
I mean, they said they reduced the overall cost, but increased the initial cost. So the first enchant is going to be a lot more expensive than it was previously, but the total amount will go up less per enchant, leading to an overall decrease in the enchantment costs. I mean, that sounds nice, because, I mean, at a certain point, the enchantment costs would get to, what, like 2 million, 4 million, like 8 million, 10 million, like, per enchant. I mean, it remains to be seen exactly what they mean by reduced. I mean, are we still going to hit, like, 10 million enchant costs? Maybe it'll take more enchants before we hit the 10 million mark. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, they haven't given us numbers, right? So we don't have any numbers. All we know is they just said it's going to be more expensive for the first enchant and less expensive for subsequent enchants. But how expensive is that first enchant going to be? And then from that first enchant, as it rises, you know, like if it starts at 1 million and then it goes up from 1 million, that's still going to be pretty expensive, right? But like it depends on what that first enchantment cost is, because that's going to set the precedent for all the other increases. But they basically said it's not going to spike anymore. So I'm not sure if you guys were played around with it. I know a lot of you probably have, but some of you might not. But basically what would happen is it would be like 50K for the first one, right? And then you would go to do the second enchant, and it would be like 400K. And then you would go to do the third enchant, and it would be like 800K. And then you would go to do the fourth enchant, and it would be like like 1 million or like 2 million, and it just kept spiking really, really fast to the point where after a couple enchants, you would just give up on the item because nobody wants to spend 2 or 3 or 4 million per enchant unless they've just got tons of bought gold sitting around. This change right here, this one is a little strange to me. Like, basically what they're saying here is that in the place of a normal magic or rare item that you would get in World Tier 3. So, like, say, for instance, let's use World Tier 4 as an example. If you're in World Tier 4 and a sacred item drops, instead of giving you the sacred item, they're just going to turn it into crafting materials. So you'll just get crafting materials for that sacred item. But it seems kind of strange because the sacred items kind of... You would collect the sacred items and give them to your lower level characters. Although the item level was stuck at level 60 for sacreds, which was kind of stupid. So basically, you're no longer going to be able to find sacreds at all, essentially, in World Tier 4. And you're no longer going to be able to find normal rares in World Tier 3. They're just going to convert directly into crafting materials, and they're just not going to show for you anymore. They did say that legendary items will still drop as sacred in World Tier 4. And the other items, like, for instance, the normal, magic, and rare, those are the ones that are going to be converted into crafting materials. I'm not really sure I like this change. I feel like it's a move away from being able to gear out your other characters. It's a move away from being able to share equipment with lower level characters. And I think it creates a divide in between the higher level characters and the lower level characters, even more so than there was before. At least when you found a pretty decent sacred item, you could pass it on to your friend who was a lower level character, maybe in World Tier 3. But now you essentially can't anymore. So if you're in World Tier 4 and you're farming ancestral equipment and you find you're just not going to find the sacred items anymore to hand down. And same thing with the guys in World Tier 3, you're just not going to find the normal items to hand down to the lower level players either. So it's just going to create kind of like an odd divide between the tiers, which is odd. Although it does offer less sifting through all the crap in your inventory, which I guess is a bonus.
This is another one of the reasons why we made this big change, the Whisper Gold increase. We made some other gold increases as well, to basically offset any concerns that players might have about needing to sell.
Let's see here. What's up, Leon? This change right here is a really big one, and I'm kind of torn on it. Let's listen to what they have to say again about this change. Let me go back just right before they start with this change.
Yeah, the big changes we have planned. So another thing that we're doing as part of Season 2, and again, this is on the Eternal Realm and also in the Seasonal Realm, is that when you start to go into World Tier 3 and 4, items that are dropping for you are going to get more powerful based on the monster level that you're fighting. Now, this is in response to, so all of the item changes we're making in response to player feedback we've been receiving since preseason and Season 1. Season 2 represents the first really great opportunity that we've had to spend a good amount of time kind of responding to this feedback, getting things tested, getting things into the game. So we're really excited to offer things like this. But there's situations where players will get into World Tier 3. They'll finish off a lot of the gear that they need inside Sacred Tier fairly early. 50, 55, 56. They start getting ready to make the transition potentially early into World Tier 4 to get into their Ancestral Tier. And then that can end up in a situation where by the time that you are level 65, 68, 70, you've kind of collected all the Ancestral gear that you can get, minus uniques you might still be hunting for, once you get into that tier. But you might have already got all of the gear that you're looking for, particularly eye power-wise, as you're progressing through. Now the way that we've changed things is that starting in Sacred Tier, I guess we'll talk about Sacred Tier first. So if you fight a level 55 monster, you'll have the typical Sacred eye power range when you're fighting that creature. When you fight a level 56 creature, the eye power minimum and maximum of that range increases by